So I say most people believe there is something dramatically wrong in this country. They're not sure what it is.
Got your labor next your soul, interest slave in endless hole. It's so deep you'll never leave, a text on key with no reprieve. Interest banking, future sold, paper money, fuck the gold. Print more money, there's no end, new interest rates thanks to the Fed. Inflation's up, we can't afford to import, source an endless hoard. Funding all this endless war, these the whores I must ignore. Feeling good, yeah that's my price. The system lets me have my vice. Bread and circus feels nice, feeling bad, take this advice. Just take this pill, watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill, watch some porn, drain your vril. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. Never thought that this would happen, should've prepped instead of fapping. Tires screeching, people scream, living nightmare, not a dream. There goes all my dopamine, wiping off my jerk-off cream. I'm flabby, weak and unprepared to own a gun, I'm really scared. Water filters, batteries, cans of food and MREs. I really should've bought that shit before the social fabric ripped. Atomize, I'm all alone, no internet, can't scroll my phone. The lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. Came on, I can't believe, breathe a sigh of great relief. Boy, I love modernity, endless goon sesh never leave. If you're sad, just take this pill. Watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, join your grill. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out.
And we are live once again with the Library of Mass Destruction. I am your host, Capitalisimo, and with me, as always, is Christopher Sandbatch. Christopher Sandbatch, how are you doing today?
Well, I was doing great until I realized we're competing with Digital Archipelago, and now I want to kill Geo. I want to kill Geo.
It came back just in time to fuck with us. Specifically, I take it personally.
This is like the third show Prude has done today on Iranian missiles, though.
The Prudentialist, for anyone who somehow is listening to this show and does not know who the Prudentialist is one of the best extemporaneous speakers on any geopolitical topic. Actual one of the best. It's shocking that he has not been hired by the Blaze or something.
He was on McIntyre today.
I know he was on McIntyre, but he has not been hired by the Blaze. He was not on the Prudentialist show.
You know who else? You know who else should be hired by the Blaze? It's Steve Sandbatch should be hired by the Blaze. Speaking of which, I finished a book, which is
Did
cool.
you? That's why, you learned to read.
It took a long time. Some people caught me a couple of times holding it upside down, at the far end of town where the grickle grass grows, and I was just reciting it. I was holding the book upside down, and they were like, "You just memorize that shit," and I was like, "Yeah, I know." But
I presume, of course, you mean that you have written a volume.
Yeah.
It's prose, even maybe prose.
No, it's not prose at all. It's the poetry. But it's finished. It's actually fucking finished.
Well, that's very good.
And then
You've lifted your pen.
I don't understand you all. Like you all, again, sometimes I live in such a goddamn backwards world that like everybody's like, oh, so you finished a novel, huh? And I'm like, no, it's poetry. And everybody goes, bah. And I'm like, which you don't understand. Novels are trash. Poetry is the highest art. And
okay,
like
here's the thing.
everybody rolls their eyes at
it's
me.
a lot easier to write a collection of poetry than it is to write a novel. But
like that's so not true.
no, it is though. It's just that poetry has a lower skill floor and a skill ceiling that extends to infinity.
Ooh, let me think about that.
I agree. I agree that poetry is, of course, the highest use of language. After DDDing someone, of course.
Yeah.
But
very similar. They're very similar.
You could totally DDD someone with poetry. In fact,
Jolly West,
Rupi Kaur makes me experience debility, dependency, and dread all at once when reading any of her bullshit. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it is not harder, for Rupi Kaur to write a poetry book than it is for a person of character to write a novel.
Wait, hold on. I just want to be like, this isn't like bullshit like Dime Square confession, like, oh, my pap smear came back positive poetry.
I understand that. Not having read it, not having read it at all, I already know you're no Rupi Kaur.
I don't even know who that is. Who is that?
Oh, really? Oh my God! Oh, she's like the Tumblr poet.
Oh,
like
man.
Instagram poetry, like the really shitty line drawings that look like doodle tattoos.
Ooh.
in all of her books. Yeah, she's rocking some like Frida Kahlo eyebrows.
Oh, is she hot?
Let's check
it. Let's check it out.
She's a Sandbatch 12. Which means she's a she's a 4.
She looks kind of Indian.
Yeah, she's packy.
Oh, there's a feet pic. Nope, that's a negative. Negative Ghost Rider.
She has bad feet.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Her hooves were not sufficiently cloven.
I mean, they're like some serious, like, she's got some paddle feet is the only way I could describe it.
Swims well. You need a woman who flounders in water. Someone with dainty feet that just don't propel her through the water.
She might have webbed toes.
She's like really good. She's really good. Her legs don't split until the ankles. She's like a sea lion.
Let's check the poetry out. When snow falls, I long for grass. When grass grows, I walk all over it. When leaves change color, I beg for flowers. When flowers bloom, I pick them.
Yeah, Rupi Kaur's retarded.
I've read worse, but
not much.
We'll see. But yeah, no, the novellas are coming along briskly now since I'm out of things to do that aren't the novellas. So
that's wonderful. We've made it 9 minutes in without speaking about the events of the day.
I know. I was thinking about that as well. Yeah, get these big, beautiful, high definition videos of bright lights descending on Tel Aviv.
Yeah, why would you watch the Library of Mass Destruction intro video, courtesy of Micah Pohl, when the timeline is sodden with brand new dripping 4K videos of supersonic rockets slamming into Tel Aviv? Yep.
Oh my God, Cat. Jesus. Ah.
They're I mean, I don't want to be like a normie sadist, but at least this war is more kino than the Ukraine-Russian war.
Yeah, that one got really old. You had to look really hard to find videos of it, and then it would just be like some like trash compactor tier drone, like funneling napalm into a trench. And like, you could tell a lot of people were dying, but like, you just really didn't get that oomph that you needed from like, to make the LMD intro cut, you know?
That's right. Right. Well, yeah, I mean, just like a POV shot of a drone, like chasing a fleeing 45-year-old semi-retired Ukrainian potato farmer is not exactly like.
Oh, you made it sound way more interesting than it was.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's not the same thing as orbital bombardments. I mean, it looks like space battleship Yamato.
It's literally
parked in geostationary orbit above Tel Aviv.
For the millennials out there, it's literally like a Halo cutscene, you know.
It's insane. How did it's almost like the missiles were reverse engineered to look like that. You know what I mean?
You know,
like to fucking look really cool.
Yeah. I do think there's some hyperstitional elements there though, where like, you know, video. This is why I'm so troubled by the fact that tech bros only know about like Dune, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars, because they keep like hyperstitioning the most horrifying shit into the world, because it's like in their data bank of things to think about and build. That's all they've got. So that's what they build. You know, I'm like, come on, do something cool.
You know, we could really get them into like yeah, and they don't read anymore, and there hasn't been like there hasn't been a faithful, I'm not going to say there hasn't been a faithful adaptation of like Starship Troopers. So that's why we haven't had like real exoskeletons with tactical nukes and flamethrowers on the arms and shit. You know, we just haven't had good power armor yet.
Gabe says, sorry, I had to watch some fish tank recaps, and he missed me talking about Rupi Kaur's feet.
Yeah,
which I'm sure is material that Gabe.
Well, that's probably what summoned him here.
Yeah,
to be honest, you know, it's like somewhere someone is talking about feet pics. All right, well, so this episode, I think we're probably going to finish None Dare Call It Conspiracy.
I'm so sad
on this round. You know, it is no aberration in the heartland of the real. I'm so sad to say, but
not many things are going to be like. Not many things in this category are going to be. But we do need a new book now, though.
We do need a new book, but fortunately, we have one. We have Call It Conspiracy. The
low rent guys here.
That's right. We have the DLC version of this book. So you know, they wrote this and they released this in the early 70s. They updated it in literally 1984 with Call It Conspiracy. And so we're gonna, you know, they're gonna predict a bunch of things about Nixon, none of which of course include getting Watergated. So you know, we'll see how they work their way through that, what their calls to action are over the next, you know, little bit, and then we'll see how they cope and or seethe about their about it in the beginning of or I guess about halfway through Call It Conspiracy, because they completely republished this book in the front half of Call It Conspiracy. So
that's what I'm going to do too. The first half of my second book is just going to be my first book.
It's just going to be your first book. That's how all sequels should work. Yeah, that's right. All righty. All right. Well, so after what? Go ahead.
And my cat has installed herself, so she might get bitchy.
Cool. Just like all the ladies in your life. After the insiders have established the United Socialist States of America, in fact, if not in name, the next step is the great merger of all nations of the world into a dictatorial world government. This was the main reason behind the push to bring Red China into the United Nations. If you want to control the natural resources, transportation, commerce, and banking for the whole world. You must put everybody under the same roof. The insiders.
It has to be a roof that everyone can see. Also, never mind the fact that the rest of this book was about an insider conspiracy that's happening just out of plain sight. It actually doesn't work unless the United Nations, the most visible institution in the world, has communist red China in it. That's when you can tell that's when you can tell you've really got an insider conspiracy going.
I mean, the thing is that, yeah, like, what else would the United Nations be other than an attempt to, like, create a global hegemony? It's
Right.
just that the relationship that they had, that the relationship that they are positing in this book was exactly backwards, right? The United Nations was a tool for the United States to get global hegemony, not the other way around.
Well, I guess you get some points for at least noticing the mechanism. It's like a chemistry test.
Yeah.
You get some points for noticing the mechanism.
The insider's code word for the superstate is New World Order, a phrase often used by Richard Nixon. The Council on Foreign Relations states in its study number 7, the U.S. must strive to A, build a new international order, capitals in the original. Establishment spokesman James Reston of the Council on Foreign Relations declared in his internationally syndicated column for the New York Times of May 21, 1971, Nixon would obviously like to preside over the creation of a new world order, and believes he has an opportunity to do so in the last 20 months of his first term. Do you think that, like, the concept of new world order as a scare phrase, I mean, it's an inherently conservative response, right? Like, to be upset by the idea of a new world order.
I have the engram up. I preempted you a little bit.
Oh,
I have
there we go.
I have the engram up. It is a non-existent phrase at all until 1914, and it doesn't ever leave the vernacular after 1914, but it peaks in 1919, so it's going to be around the Congress. That's going to be around the League of Nations stuff. Then it spikes again in 1942 for some reason. I wonder what's going on there. And then back down to almost nothing, and then back down to almost nothing. It like ticks up a little bit in the 60s and over the course of the 70s, but it massively spikes between 1985 and 1993. So that would indicate that it's like just so essentially conservative, because it's like,
Yeah.
that's like wrong. That's all the people who read this book, like creating like newsletters and circulating them during the Reagan administration.
Yes, the Ron Paul newsletter. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
A world government has always been the object of the communists. In 1917, in number 40 of the Russian organ, the Socialist Democrat, Lenin proposed a United States of the world. The program of the Communist Internationale of 1936 says that the world dictatorship can be established only by victory of socialism in different countries or groups of countries, after which the proletariat republics would unite on federal lines with those already in existence, and this system would expand, at length forming the World Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
This is famously despite my proclivity for Russian women and that sort of thing, and my Russian history is not great, I think this was the conference in which the Trotskyites were expelled, and they had all the big show trials. And so the move from like the never ending war for the worker state to socialism in one country, I think that's what's going on there.
Let's see.
We need to get our own United Nations with blackjack and hookers.
Yes. We need to get our own we need to get our own United Nations without blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
One of the most important groups promoting the World Union is the United World Federalists, whose membership is heavily interlocked with that of the Council on Foreign Relations. Well, if that's the case, then why is this not about the United World Federalists?
You know who else they haven't mentioned? The boogeyman. It's just too early to say. They have not mentioned the Trilateral Commission, which usually goes hand in hand with the Council on Relations.
Yeah. Well, wasn't the Trilateral Commission was that not during the Nixon administration?
Was it established during the Nixon? Oh, maybe it was.
Was it not?
I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
Trilateral Commission. Oh, it came. All I had to do, I entered TRI.
Oh no!
Yeah, founded in 1973. Though, yeah.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so yeah, the UWF advocate turning the UN into a full-fledged world government, which would include the communist nations. It seems like a great way to secretly color revolution the communist nations. I mean, it's kind of, Anyway, Richard Nixon is, of course, far too clever to actually join the UWF, but he has supported their legislative program since his early days in Congress. In the October 1948 issue of the UWF publication, World Government News. Wow. So secret. World Government News, a publication. What's it about?
You mean WGN?
Yeah. On page 14, there appears to be the following announcement. What does it mean? Appears to be. There appears to be the following announcement. Richard Nixon introduced World Government Resolution, HCR 68, 1947, and ABC World Government Resolution, 1948. World government has a strong that's like nonsense. Like it's just like what is like it's just like a string of it's like a citation he's noting here. Okay.
No, they'll fix it and call it conspiracy, I'm sure.
Oh my God. World government has a strong emotional appeal for Americans based on their universal desire for world peace. I really think it fucking doesn't. I think that world government is something that people have a visceral negative reaction to, especially Americans. Like,
yeah, that
like that is that's like a completely Euro-coded kind of ambition.
It's like not even like you would be until the last 10 years, you would be hard pressed to find like nominal Democrats who are like down for that. And like now that Trump is in power, like the idea that Trump is trying to create a one world government is a conspiracy theory on the left again. So like, yeah, Americans of all stripes are, America is really strange in that it at base, we're not actually really good at being leftists, and we're also not very good at being right wingers. We have like this, there's a great book about this called The Paranoid Style in American Politics, where we can be schizo, but at the end of the day, we have a tendency to like drift into like sort of like normie-tard liberalism with like, minor flavor enhancements.
An alarming regularity.
Yeah.
Yeah. The insiders have the communists rattling their sabers with one hand and dangling the olive branch with the other. Naturally, everyone gravitates towards the olive branch, not realizing that the olive branch is controlled by another arm of the entity that is rattling the sabers. That is a brutally redundant series of sentences.
But
terrible stylistically.
I'm watching Twin Peaks season 3 with John D right now, and I was like, "Oh, the arm's doppelganger." Yeah.
In September of 1968, candidates for public office received a letter from the United World Federalists that stated, "Our organization has been endorsed and commended by all U.S. presidents in the last 20 years and by the current nominees for the presidency. As examples, we quote as follows. Richard Nixon, your organization can perform an important service by continuing to emphasize world peace can only come through world law. Our goal is world peace. Our instrument for achieving peace will be law and justice. If we concentrate our energies towards these ends, I'm hopeful real progress can be made. Hubert Humphrey. Every one of us is committed to brotherhood and among all nations, but no one pursues these goals with more dignity and dedication than the United World Federalists. I feel like I probably should have made Hubert Humphrey sound unbelievably gay.
I was gonna say it was very clear to me that you had no idea. That first of all, that was
I have no idea.
Nixon. That was your best Richard Nixon ever, and I was like, it was painfully apparent you have no idea what Hubert.
I have no idea what Hubert Humphrey sounds like.
He was kind of a gibbering, high pitched, like sort of squealy dude.
All right, I'm gonna do the Hubert Humphrey again. Hubert Humphrey. Every one of us is committed to brotherhood among all nations, but no one pursues these goals with more dignity and dedication than the United World Federalists. There we go. That's a spot on Humphrey, I'm sure.
Laid it on a little heavy, but yeah.
Tiptoe through the tulips. There we go.
It's like tip. So he was going to say, "Did you see tiptoe through the tulips?"
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Tiny Tim, man, massive, greasy man. All right, there really was not a dime's worth of difference. Dimes mentioned. Voters were given the choice between CFR World Government Advocate Nixon and CFR World Government Advocate Humphrey. Only the rhetoric was changed to fool the public. A world government requires a world Supreme Court, and Mr. Nixon is on record in favor of a world Supreme Court. And a world government must have a world police force to enforce the laws of the world superstate and keep the slaves from rebelling. The Los Angeles Examiner of October 28, 1950, reported that Congressman Richard Nixon had introduced a resolution calling for the establishment of a United Nations police force.
This is just point out, he is like, thus far today, he has totally abandoned the idea of opposition to the left and has like zeroed in on the real target.
On hating Richard Nixon.
Yes.
That's right. It's not the communists, guys. It's Richard Nixon. Although as we speak, apparently the I don't know, maybe I'm going to sound stupid next week because I'm not trusting the plan. But as we speak, it is extremely unclear as to whether or not the United States is going to be bombing Iran this evening.
This is true. Dandy Don is like, let me hop on Truth Social and say something really cryptic and then step back
and people fleeing from Tehran like the Basra Highway. Yeah.
Sandbatch gay. Wait, so many a time the true self pondered beneath old Sandy's rustic demeanor, a southern dandy's butthole clean.
Yes. Insulting rhymes.
Oh,
the highest form of insult.
Okay, if you got to do a limerick. You got to do a limerick.
Anytime a true self pondered beneath old Sandy's rustic demeanor, a southern dandy's butthole cleaner. That's right. Yeah, you got to do
a true cell.
A true cell, someone who is a virgin.
Oh, okay, I don't know what the cells are.
Yeah.
You can be both illiterate and
I'm a poet.
That
too.
Works.
I'm illiterate. Wonderful. Thank you, El. Let's see here. Not surprisingly, the insiders have their pet planners preparing to administrate their world dictatorship. Under an immense geodetic dome. Why does it say geodetic instead of geodesic? Isn't it geodesic?
Yeah, he's just no copy editing here.
Anyway,
we should like make a list of the typographic errors and send them
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the geodesic dome is the inheritor of the geodetic.
Let's find out. I feel it's got to be geodesic. Geodetic.
Anyway.
Geodetic. Let me jammy that one right up. Oh, nope. It's a word relating to geodesy, especially as applied to land surveying. So unclear.
So they are okay. Well, whatever. We'll just say they're related.
Yeah.
Let's see. Under an immense geodetic dome at Southern Illinois University is a completely detailed map of the world. Oh, actually, I happen to know that the dome at Southern Illinois University was designed by Buckminster Fuller himself, and so it is a geodesic dome. So,
but they appear to be the same thing. So I mean, like the Wikipedia page is geodesy or geodetics. They appear to be somewhat like interchangeable.
Okay,
Buckminster Fuller mentioned though
far too pedantic for this particular niggle. Immense geodetic dome at Southern Illinois University is a completely detailed map of the world which occupies the space of 3 football fields. Operating under grants from the Ford, Carnegie, and Rockefeller Foundations, all extensively interlocked with the Council on Foreign Relations, a battery of scientists, including everything from geographers, psychologists, and behavioral scientists to natural scientists, biologists, biochemists, and agronomists, are making plans to control people. Yes, Southern Illinois University. This was where it was all happening. Also, I'm pretty sure isn't that where David Foster Wallace taught?
It definitely is.
Okay.
Now, I don't know. I'm not going down that route.
These elite planners conduct exercises in what they call the world game. For example, there are this is just a big board game, isn't it? It really is. Gary Allen just didn't understand that board games could be, bigger than Monopoly. For example, there are too many people in country A and not enough people in country B. Oh no. How do you move people from country A to country B? We need so many males, so many females, so many of this occupation and so many of that occupation, so many of this age and so many of that age. How do you get these people from country A and settle them in country B in the shortest time? Oh no.
Slaps the roof of country B. You can fit so many military age migrant
males,
climate refugees in here.
Yes. Oh my God. Another example, we have an uprising in country C, or as it would now be called, District C. How long did this book predicted what was that fucking Hunger Games? This book predicted Hunger Games. We have an uprising in country C, or as it would now be called District C. How long does it take to send in peace forces, peace in scare quotes, to stop the insurgency? The world game people run exercises on global control. If you plan on running the world, you cannot go about it haphazardly. That is why the insiders of the Ford, Carnegie, and Rockefeller Foundations are making these plans. The real name of the game is 1984.
No, man.
It was an instruction manual for a board game.
Literally, Gabe at 713 in the chat, 1984, the instruction manual.
Fucking called it. We will have systematic population reduction, forced sterilization, or anything else which the planners deem necessary to establish absolute control in their humanitarian utopia. But to enforce these plans, you must have an all-powerful world government. You can't do this if individual nations have sovereignty, or sovereignty. Sorry, I always say sovereignty, but it's definitely sovereignty. It's just my mispronunciation of that word. And before you can facilitate the great merger is really one that has fallen out of favor. Would we say Great Reset? Great Reset would be the same thing, pretty much.
I mean, as a poet, I can tell you, as a poet now, I can tell you that the great merger just doesn't bounce.
Yeah, it kind of great merger is just like, it's a very slurry word, right?
I'll tell you one thing also.
There's no percussiveness to it.
One of the things that's most fascinating, again, and I don't think I've mentioned this yet until now, but like really, if there's one real fault in the thinking of this book, it's the basis of the book, which is that none dare call it conspiracy. Okay, whatever. One of the things that and I used to work in conservative fundraising, conservative campaign strategies, and that sort of thing. One of the things that always amazed me was how close to the top of the conservative movement this idea of the global conspiracy goes. Like, this and I don't mean like networks. I mean like the hierarchical, like eyes wide shut conspiracy. And I think there's something intrinsic in the conservative, like sort of like K structure, the conservative mind that like can't ponder disordered systems. Like the idea that like maybe you can govern the world haphazardly has never entered most of them's mind, despite evidence,
all of the fucking evidence, despite the ample evidence that you can be a ruler and can be a fuck up.
Yeah.
The best argument against conspiracy theories is just that it is just that it's in some cases it is wishful thinking that somebody is in control.
Right. And that's what the thing that sort of shakes out of this is that there is like an almost fetish for the idea of like Hunter S. Thompson says the idea that somebody is tending the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, but like, no, the truth is even scarier. It's like,
these are just people who want to be respected at the right parties.
Right.
That is the actual shit. Which is also why you have to actually retire all government employees, or else you will not change it is 100% cultural. You will not change things unless you get people who go to different parties and who want to go to different parties. It's shocking, right? But you need to sever all of the social connections to power in order to actually gain control. That's why fraternal networks used to be so powerful. And that's why the right wing needs fraternal networks. Like the old Glory Club.
Like the old Glory Club.
That's right. That's why the Manor Bund is important, right?
And you need be sure to sneed those super chaps if you want to help me build a pre-Raphaelite art colony in southwestern Arkansas.
I don't want you to build it there. I want you to build it somewhere else, but I do want you to build it. So sneed those super chats. Remember, we will spend it on parties, but with our guys, and no blackjack. Well, maybe some blackjack, but no hookers. Let's see here.
No comment.
Systematic population reduction, forced sterilization, or anything else which the plan is deemed necessary to establish absolute control in their humanitarian utopia. But to enforce these plans, you must have an all-powerful world government. You can't do this if individual nations have sovereignty. And before you can facilitate the great merger, you must first centralize control within each nation, destroy the local police, and remove the guns from the hands of the citizenry. You must replace our once free constitutional republic with an all-powerful central government. And that is exactly what is happening today in the Nixon administration. Every action of any consequence, despite the smokescreen, has centralized more power in what is rapidly becoming an all-powerful central government. What we are witnessing is the communist tactic of pressure from above and pressure from below, described by communist historian Jan Kozak as the device used by the Reds to capture control of Czechoslovakia. The pressure from above comes from secret, ostensibly respectable comrades in the government and establishment, forming with the radicalized mobs in the streets below a giant pincer around middle-class society. The street rioters are pawns, shills, puppets, and dupes for an oligarchy of elitist conspirators working above to turn America's limited government into an unlimited government with total control over our lives and property.
I don't respect our Constitution one bit.
Well, last Saturday, the nation saw the No Kings protest, which was bankrolled by the heiress to the Walmart fortune, a company which, no secret, relies on cheap labor and plastic bullshit that's made in China and would be impacted by tariffs.
Also, apparently the largest protest in American history.
Yes, yeah, just like the most
By a
votes.
factor of like 2. Apparently, like I didn't see any of it.
Well, that's because so they had kind of a brilliant strategy actually, where they were like, make it as easy as possible, like tell people exactly where to go. Like, oh, you're in Peoria. You know, there's one where you can go that's like less than 40. It's like they made sure that everyone had one within 45 minutes of their fucking house.
Yeah.
And
And
so
I'm sure they piggybacked on Pride Month shit too.
Yeah, and it's just like, so they made sure everyone had one within 45 minutes of their house, and so everyone went out and all the shit libs went out and did it, and it was like, I don't know, 1 million people or something that it was supposedly went. I don't know how you actually track that, but let's say their numbers are accurate. um Honestly, it wasn't a terrible strategy. It was probably money well spent. Not that it'll have an immediate impact, because who fucking cares? But the thing is that all of the people who went to those things, it's mostly boomers, right? But the younger people who did go would have made social connections,
Yeah,
and
it's true.
and would have made social connections with the boomers who are desperate to support,
Desperate to
somebody.
offload some of this money
Yeah.
to someone who will keep the flame alive. Yeah, I mean, there's
That's right.
probably a number of next generation shitlib influencers were probably birthed at the No Kings
Yeah,
Kings
in terms of
protest.
the necessity of building those social connections, like this type of thing seeded an unknown number of shitlib cells in every single within 45-minute drive times of each other, right,
Should have gone.
throughout the country. Yeah, so
Get some of that sweet shitlib money
sweet shitlib money.
for my pre-Raphaelite art cult.
Okay.
This bit's getting old, man.
It's getting old, man. All right. Let's see. The American middle class is being squeezed to death by a vice. See chart 9.
We got a chart. It's a
It's
vice.
a vice. It's a vice.
This is by far the best one yet.
This is the best one. Rothschild, Rockefeller, the Council on Foreign Relations. Oh, it's the pressure from above because it's on the top. The middle class. The middle class is the negative. Honestly, what do you make about the middle class being negative space?
That's a good point. Well, there could be a board.
The middle class is
negative space.
The middle class is negative space.
I have a lot of
poverty is a real state. Poverty and wealth are real states. The middle class is a negative state. It merely exists.
Space.
Yeah, it merely exists in transition. It's like being in orbit. You just have to be falling fast enough in the right direction.
Yeah,
that's the middle class.
I would point out again. Sorry, smoker's cough.
Yeah,
but the thing that's really interesting, because again, we've got this here. This is neo-reactionary talking point that we see emerging already in the 1970s. So, like, once again, Spandrell, or whatever the fuck his name was, is literally just ripping our buddy Gary Allen and Larry Abraham. And in fact, they probably were directly ripping this book. I've been watching Moldbug on the Twitter, and I'm like, oh God, you seem more and more like a mid 70s like conspirator. Yeah, he seems more like a Bircher every day. And I think, but so this is a thing. And I don't like to push, I'm not one to push back against right-wing orthodoxy ever for any reason. Waiting for it.
Okay.
But there might be something here to the idea of the middle class itself being a transient state that sort of it's just not stable. Yeah, it's not. Because what are the qualities of the middle class? They tend to be relatively high salary. They tend to be higher, not even higher, because there's a lower and upper middle class. There's they tend to be salaried employees of, I guess, corporations and mid-sized companies and that sort of thing. This is an inherently unstable way to go about living. Like if the source of your money is dependent on a company that's not under your control, paying you more money than you're probably worth to them to like
and your leverage to the tits.
Yeah, exactly. This is an inherently transitory state, and it may not in fact be a war on the middle class. It may just in fact be that conditions for the middle class to exist are very very fickle. Because the concept of the middle class isn't new. It's not something that hasn't been. It's not something. It's been around since. I mean, of course, the Romans had it. It kind of dissipates in what we would call the early Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, but it reemerges again by the 11th century, but it's a vanishingly small percentage of the population.
The middle class exists only in limited circumstances, typically in an environment of social transition.
Yeah,
and
I think that's right.
The way that the American middle class worked was with stable jobs, like both in terms of the need for the production and in terms of the geography.
Yeah.
And the availability of debt.
Yeah.
So both of those things were necessary. That's how you kept people, kept people in orbit. So they had to have enough burn to stay there, but they had to fall, so they needed the debt. And
Valkyrie says poverty only exists as a state of mind. I applaud the sentiment, but I also beseech you all to sneed those super chats so I can eat
those super chats. That's right. This man is sick of stealing food from his cat, and his cat is an alley cat. So it's stealing food from the dumpster behind the Chinaman.
Yeah, she's a bitch. So, she fights back.
That's right. He's covered in scratches. He's gonna get cat scratch fever. One of the only non STD diseases Sandbatch is susceptible to.
I have never had an STD. Not one.
Really? True
Never.
cell.
Yeah.
True cell. The American middle class is being squeezed to death. In the streets, we have avowed revolutionary groups such as the Students for a Democratic Society, which was started by the League for Industrial Democracy, a group with strong CFR ties. The Black Panthers, the Hippies, the Young Socialist Alliance. These groups chant that if we don't change America, we will lose it. Change is a word we hear over and over. By change, these groups mean socialism. Virtually all members of these groups sincerely believe that they're fighting the establishment. In reality, they are an indispensable ally of the establishment in fastening socialism on all of us. The naive radicals think that under socialism, the people will run everything. Actually, it will be a clique of insiders in total control, consolidating and controlling all wealth. That is why these schoolboy Lenins and teenage Trotskys are allowed to roam free and are practically never arrested or prosecuted. Boy, the more things the more things change, huh? The more they stay the same. They are protected. If the establishment wanted the revolutionaries stopped, how long do you think they would be tolerated?
It's sort of interesting that, because I mean, we've arrived at the chart. It's sort of interesting to me that he uses hippies in. Oh man, now there's a lot going on here. So, I think I've said before that all this shit is downstream of queer theory. The Black Panthers he is right. The Black Panthers are kind of a creation of these, or the only group that he names there that I would take real umbrage with is the hippies, who themselves are
Actually, it says the yippies.
Right. No, he says the hippies.
No. But on this chart,
right,
he does not use hippies. He uses yippies. So it's Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah. And Abby Hoffman. Abby Hoffman is the guy and so I mean he's right here whenever he uses yippies but again, this knee-jerk sort of attack on the hippies in the text itself is sort of sort of interesting. The hippies were not really that. The hippies were not anything really. They were just kind of what they were. You know, they're not political, or they're not. So they don't really fit into the. They don't really fit into the. I mean, they're an MK Ultra creation or marketing creation, but they're not. They don't really fit in with the rest of this groups, which do. I'm also surprised he didn't get. I'm surprised he didn't get queer activists in there. I don't know how he missed that one.
He hasn't mentioned the gays once.
Yeah, that's which makes me. What are you up to, Gary and Larry?
What are you up to, Gary and Larry? Yeah, what are you doing behind those closed doors? Instead, we find that most of these radicals are the recipients of largesse from major foundations or are receiving money from the government through the war on poverty. The Rothschild, Rockefeller, CFR insiders at the top surrender to the demands for socialism from the mobs below. The radicals are doing the work of those whom they hate the most. Obviously, this is all spot on. This is all very true, but also not news to us. So,
but you know, it's one of those things that makes me wonder how true it actually is. But then I remember that I have also worked in grant funding, and
then you know that in fact it's completely true.
It's absolutely
how
true.
that works.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is true. Whenever I was, I was writing grants for a climate startup. I would have to get on, and this is a real thing. I would have to get on like calls with other, because like when you're competing for, grant awards, you have to get on like webinars and other things. And the other people who are competing for, it's not going to be one grant recipient. They usually do 9 or 10 whenever they issue a funding announcement. But it would amaze me how, like the lefty climate startup gang, they had like contemporary white woman levels of confidence in their ability to secure $2.5, $3, $4 million per like funding cycle with no problem whatsoever. And then I was incredulous whenever I first started doing this. And then I like for the first time I ever wrote a grant that grants.gov, the issuing body indicated that the grant application should take 6 weeks. And we did it in 48 hours and we got partial funding. And I was like, they really are just passing this money out. Like it really is that easy. And that actually caused a massive change in my politics. I was like, I was like, okay, we have to, never mind what he's going to tell you to do. I'm like, if it's that easy, we got to fucking figure out how to point this money spigot.
We gotta get this milky tit in our mouths.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Don't kill the milky tit. Never kill the milky tit.
Never kill the milky tit. Speaking of, is socialism actually bad, or has it just not been implemented in an effective and proper way? And as EL alludes to, since we didn't get to it in time, there was a good version of it once. It's almost like here's the thing. I'm not inherently against socialism. I just think that, it should benefit the people of, a nation, right? But only one nation. And, some sort of national kind of socialism is what I would think would be the best kind.
Socialism by the people, for the people of one country.
Yes. Yeah. Or one nation, really.
Yeah.
The country's not the same thing. You can bite the nipple that feeds you, but in a playful way. No. Thank you, EL. With the, man, we know EL's a millennial now because he said nom nom nom.
Yeah.
All right. Remember Bakunin's charge that Marxist followers had one foot in the bank and the other in the socialist movement. Again, he's just like he's okay with the left anarchists. He's you notice that he's okay with the left anarchists. He thinks that anarchism is inherently right wing.
Yeah, I wonder how long that's been around. It's been a long time, but go ahead. Yeah.
Gary Allen loved the fucking political quadrants when he learned about it.
Yes.
Further indications of establishment financing of the communist SDS are contained in James Kunin's The Strawberry Statement, Notes of a College Revolutionary. Describing the events of the 1968 SDS National Convention, Kunin says, also at the convention, men from Business International roundtables, the meeting sponsored by Business International for their client groups and heads of government, tried to buy up a few radicals. These men are the world's leading industrialists, and they convene to decide how our lives are going to go. These are the boys who wrote the Alliance for Progress. They're the left wing of the ruling class. They agreed with us on black control and student control. Oh man, black control. Let's bring that back.
That's a Substack essay for tomorrow morning.
Black
control.
They want McCarthy in. They see fascism as the threat. See it coming from Wallace. The only way McCarthy could win is if the crazies and young radicals act up and make Gene look more reasonable. They offered to finance our demonstrations in Chicago. We were also offered Esso Rockefeller money. They want us to make a lot of radical commotion so they can look more in the center as they move to the left. That is the strategy. The landscape painters focus your attention on the kids in the street while the real danger is from above. As Frank Capel recently observed in the Review of the News, of course, we know that these radical students are not going to take over the government. What they're going to do is provide the excuse for the government to take over the people by passing more and more repressive laws to keep things under control. They did take over the government. They're the boomers.
Yeah.
Tragically. The radicals make the commotion in the streets while the limousine liberals at the top in New York and Washington are socializing us.
This may be the first use of the phrase limousine liberal.
I would love to see the limousine liberal engram. Yeah,
it's coming. Don't worry.
We are going to have a dictatorship of the elite disguised as a dictatorship of the proletariat. Again, he has a completely Marxist frame. It's great. It's wonderful. I love his consistency.
First use in the 1930s.
Wow.
But almost nothing
right after the invention of limousine.
Yeah, they got on that one real fast. But I mean, literally then back down to nothing and then massive spike up to about the relative 50% line in the Ingram chart between 1969 and 1972. So like this is like
wow.
Right. Yeah,
like this was the phrase at the time.
It's quite mimetic, yeah.
Now the insiders of the establishment are moving into a more sophisticated method of applying pressure from below. John Gardner, a quote-unquote Republican and member of the CFR, has established a grassroots proletarian organization called Common Cause. This may become the biggest and most important organization in American history. It didn't. Common Cause's goal is to organize welfare recipients, those who have not voted before, and liberals to lobby for socialism. That lobbying will not only be expressed in pressuring Congress to pass socialist legislation, but will also be expressed as ballot power in elections. Common Cause is supposedly the epitome of anti-establishmentarianism, but who is paying the bills? Well, obviously they're on welfare, so it's obvious. The elite insider radicals from above, the number one bankroller of this group to overthrow the super rich and redistribute their wealth among the poor, is John D. Rockefeller III. Other key financiers are Andrew Heiskell, CFR, chairman of the board of Time Inc., Thomas Watson, CFR, chairman of the board of IBM, John Whitney, CFR of Standard Oil Fortune, Sol Linowitz, not going to need an early life check here, CFR, chairman of the board of Xerox, and Gardner Cowles of Cowles Publications. In any organization, the man who pays the bills is the boss. The others are his employees. What better proof could we have that socialism is not a movement of downtrodden masses, but of power-hungry elites? The poor are merely pawns in the game. Needless to say, the landscape painters hide Common Cause's financial angels so that only those who understand the establishment's game plan is socialism understand what is going on before their very eyes.
I don't know how I feel about that employee analogy. I somehow don't feel it's true.
You don't
But-
feel it's true that the person who pays the bills is the employee. Seems like the
Well,
person who pays the bills is the customer.
Yeah, but well, no, like it's like this very sort of de-dimensionalized
In the land of
idea.
skunks, the man with half a nose is king.
Yeah. Oh my God. It ain't about right or true. Just let the story find its tune. Oh man.
Is that Bob Dylan?
No, that's me actually.
Oh, sounded
Yeah.
like Bob Dylan.
And, yeah. Well, I mean, let's just face it. It's
You wear your influences on your sleeve.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
right. Back to conspiracy.
Chapter 8, the final chapter.
You are the answer.
You are this is the call to action.
Yes, I was going to say here's the call to action.
That's right. Many people cannot refrain from rationalizing. After reading this book, some will bemoan the fact that the situation is hopeless. These will be many of the same people who, before reading this book, really did not believe the problems facing us were serious. Some people wake up and give up in the same week. This is, of course, just exactly what the insiders want you to do. I love the some people wake up and give up.
Yeah, that's great.
I actually, that's actually pretty. That's punchy. It's punchy.
I can like feel the like boomer summer camp vibes from it though. You know what I mean?
I mean that's got that like preacher shit.
Yeah.
Like you could imagine like a booming like Black Baptist saying like, like,
yeah, I know.
Some people wake up and give up in the same week.
Yeah.
Yep. The conspiracy can be defeated. The insiders are not omnipotent. It is true that they control important parts of the federal government, high finance, and the mass media. But they do not control everything, or the vice would already have been closed. We might say the conspiracy controls everything but you. You're their Achilles heel if you're willing to fight. There's an old cliche in sports that quitters never win and winners never quit. We need 1 million Americans who are not quitters, but moreover, who have the will to win. Of course, you can't buck the conspiracy head on, trying to fight it on its home grounds. But the insiders are vulnerable to an end run. You and thousands of others like you can make an end run if you want to. It's our intention in this closing chapter to show why it can be done and how you can do it. The timing for an end run has never been better. What Barry Goldwater said in 1964, people were willing to believe in 1968. Most people who voted for Nixon did so because he promised to balance the budget, not establish wage and price controls / government spending, not multiply it, cut welfare, not push for a guaranteed annual income, stand firm against the communists, not lead Red Chinese into the UN, and build America's defenses, not continue to unilaterally disarm us, and stop aid and trade with our avowed communist enemies, not double it. These were the issues which supposedly differentiated Nixon from Humphrey. Now we see that Nixon has repudiated his own promises and carried out those of his opponent. By 1972, millions of Americans will have concluded that there is little difference between the leadership of the two major parties. Oh no. And more people are beginning to realize that there's a tiny clique of conspirators at the top, which controls both the Democrat and Republican parties. The one thing these conspirators cannot survive is exposure. The insiders are successful only because so few of their victims know what is being planned and how insiders are carrying out those plans. Conspiracies can operate only in the dark. They cannot stand the truthful light of day. Oh, does democracy die in darkness?
Democracy dies in darkness. This is where like he's getting a little fairy tale, like, oh, conspiracy. Who the hell would plan a conspiracy that can't survive exposure? Like that's like definitely built into the should we do a conspiracy bet,
Yeah. Once any sizable minority of the American people becomes aware of the conspiracy and what it is up to, the many decades of patient planning and work by the insiders in this country can be destroyed in an amazingly short period of time. The No Kings protest, all of the ads that ran in major newspapers did say that they were paid for by the Walton family at the bottom.
They're
disclosed.
And granted, there has been like a sort of paradigm change to one extent or another, where now people are it's like the shout your abortion of where your funding comes from. But I mean, still, like a good conspiracy, a successful conspiracy, which we're positing this one is going to be a little bit more robust than that. Actually, I don't know. Pete Quinones did it. That was a great book to read. Would be Coup d'etat, but like Pete Quinones already, and I actually did like 3 of the episodes with him. We did just like this, but yeah, no, that's a great book. If you want to read like a really good book about how this works, like an actual good book about how to do a conspiracy to seize control of a country. Edward Luttwak has a book. Have you ever read it? Just out of curiosity?
I have not.
Oh man, it's incredible. It's this kind of like spoofy book, and he wrote it around this time. It's this kind of spoofy book that he wrote, and it's got like a joke, but not a joke. And it's like actually been found, like bloodstained copies of it have been found in, after African coups and that sort of thing. It's great. But he does have a whole section. It's like he goes through all the different kinds of countries that you can do a coup d'etat on. And he actually does include the United States, and his prescription for how to do it in the United States. Not terribly different from this, but he does repeatedly emphasize over and over and over again that especially in Western countries with robust communication systems, your coup d'etat has to plan for your conspiracy has to plan for exposure. At some point it's gonna leak, and what are you gonna do then? You gotta have a built-in plan for that.
Right. This job is largely a matter of getting others to realize that they've been conned and are continuing to be conned. You must become the local arm of the world's largest floating university. But before you can go to work pointing out these conspiratorial facts to others, you must know the facts yourself. This book is designed to give you these facts and can be your greatest tool. It is available on tape cassettes so that you can virtually memorize its contents by listening to it repeatedly while you're washing the dishes or driving to and from work. Wow, it's a really good way to DDD yourself.
It's called the podcast sphere, and we did it in 2016.
Induce yourself to a suggestible state and just listen to this on loop.
I do it every day. I do it at least once a week.
The concept of an army of individuals which is dedicated to exposing the conspiracy frightens the insiders because it works outside the channels which they control. Yeah, I guess everyone can just do that with Library of Mass Destruction, right? So
it's what we're in the business of.
That's the business. That's the business.
What I signed up for, damn it.
That's what I'm putting people in an induction state so that I can further radicalize them. That's what my grant writing proposal said, and that's why I got partial funding. That's right.
They slashed out all my sections about finding an e-girl.
It's tragic. One day, Sandbatch. One day.
Yeah, one day.
You'll have an e-girl to call your own. Richard Nixon has said of the Republican Party, "We've got to have a tent everyone can get into." The Democrats have obviously believed that for a long time. Maybe he is mentioning the gays.
Dude, Richard Nixon had a way of saying the gayest shit ever. So we got to have a tent all these men can get into together,
Not a log cabin.
Yeah.
But a party must be based on principles or it has no justification for existence. That is completely fucking false. Bringing socialists into the Republican Party theoretically may broaden the base, but in reality serves only to disenfranchise those who believe in a constitutional republic and the free enterprise system. Okay, so the power relationship observation is obviously correct, but yeah, and of course, smuggling the left into the right wing has been a thing that is much talked about. In 1972, the Republicans will try to make you forget that Richard Nixon was elected on George Wallace's platform, but has been carrying out Hubert Humphrey's. The pitch will be party unity. If not Nixon, then who will be the typical response to complaints about Nixon's actions. But unity with evil is evil. During the campaign of 1972, Nixon will again talk conservatively, while the CFR's Democrat candidate will sound frighteningly radical in order to stampede you into accepting Nixon as the lesser of two evils. The establishment may even run its John Lindsay or Eugene McCarthy as a far-left third or fourth party candidate in order to split the Democrat Party and re-elect Richard Nixon with a comparatively small number of votes. It is only logical that the insiders will try to apply the coup de grace against America through a Republican president simply because most people cannot believe that a Republican would be soft on communism or would jeopardize our liberty or sovereignty, I will carefully say. The watchdogs tend to go to sleep with a Republican in office.
Now it is sort of where is this guy? Is he a Democrat? Like he starts to sound a little bit like one of them Democrats, you know. I mean now, but
he's saying Nixon is the OG rhino.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he has when he was talking about Senator Gardner, he put Republican in scare quotes. So yeah,
that's right.
And he's done the rhino thing a couple of times. This was an interesting attempt on Gary and Larry's part to front end the 1972 election. There are some things they really did not account for, which was the Democrat Party totally imploding. George Wallace getting shot, and Richard Nixon not running away with a bare minimum of votes, with a relatively small number of votes, but one of the largest landslide victories in American electoral history. He won 49 states.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely fucking absolute blowout. Democrats and Republicans must break the insider control of their respective parties. The CFR types and their flunkies and social climbing opportunist supporters must be invited to leave, or else the patriots must leave. Just retreat. It's fine. It'll go well for you. It is up to you to put the politicians on the spot and make the CFR insiders a campaign issue. This can be accomplished easily by creating the base of thinking, that will oppose their positions. The socialists must be forced to gather into one party. The conspiracy doesn't want the resultant clear distinction between party ideologies. The insiders want the issues between the parties to be cloudy and gray, centering on personalities, not principles. Neither party can come out strongly against socialism as long as it is pushing socialist programs. But that is the way the insiders want it. Of course, that is true, and they, succeeded in the sense of, extending power throughout the government. But the issue, very simply, is the enslavement of you and your children. Just because many of these insiders are theoretically Americans, don't think they will spare this country the terror they have brought on to 30 others through their hired communist thugs. To the insiders, the world is their country, and their only loyalty is to themselves and their fellow conspirators. So true. So true. Rootless cosmopolitans. We're still on this. We're still on this. Nothing has changed.
You really want, but it's almost, now here's a fascinating thing that I learned when I was doing this like insider Washington stuff. One of the things that I learned is that everyone with an office above the ground floor in Washington, D.C. knows all about the fucking Jews. But they're also terrified of the Jews. And actually, this holds on the Democrat side more than it does on the Republican side. Like Democrats are legitimately horrified at Jewish influence, and like to the point where like it's like it's like a self-reifying thing where like nobody will say anything about it because they're like all afraid that they're gonna get like they're gonna wake up dead. You know, I'm now that I said something about it, I'm afraid I'm going to wake up dead.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if it came out that Sandbatch took his own life, I would blame Hillary Clinton, but I would also know that there was some chance it was, you know, you just gave in to the despair.
Just
don't do it. To be
terrible. The despair is real, but don't do it. Don't give in. Yeah. Oh man, you're terrible.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. If Sandbatch writes a book about DDD e-girls, I'll buy a few and put them in those take a book, leave a book shared libraries. Fucking do it. That is the word chthonic, isn't it?
It is quite literally book 3. It is, you know, and you know, I was talking with another one of the bright and shiny novelists of this generation that also doesn't write poetry, which apparently is a mark of prestige in our fucking backward age. The response that came forth from this one was like, that's a great idea for a book. And then wait, no, you should wait until next year to write that one. So now I'm assuming I have competition. So I got to get that one out fast too.
Right. Ham says, AKA International Banking Super Assimilated Calvinist. I've seen that bastard sitting in his office, talking on the phone to the CEO, spinning a fucking menorah. Harder to spin a menorah, not a dreidel.
Smoking 10 big fat cigars out of a menorah.
I really want to smoke a cigar right now, but
I know I'm like literally about to reach over and grab a cigarette.
My wife would be fucking pissed at me if I smoked a cigarette if I smoked a cigarillo inside the house. So I'm not going to do it.
The smell. Oh my God. The smell of tobacco smoke to me is so fucking good. Like I would like have that shit all up in my house. Faux iconoclast. That's it. I'm activating your IPAC handlers. Also FedBook win. Yeah. When is that going down? I've just like before I let Cap step in, I have seen people in group chats talking about FedBook. So I think that is coming.
FedBook is coming. FedBook is absolutely coming. It is going to be a great triumphant return of the Sidebar podcast. We had some scheduling issues and some personal life issues with one of our associates, and that has cleared up. We're back in the saddle. So FedBook coming soon, trademark. So yeah, before the weather turns.
John keeps asking me about it too. He's like, when is this going to happen? And I'm like, you know, I don't run anything, man. They just pay me in Top Ramen and they give me a place to sleep. You know,
give me a place to sleep, man. They just make sure, you know, my tent kept getting stolen when I was on the street. It's so hard to stay off the junk when you don't have a place to lay your head. Let's see.
Oh wait, hold on, Rant. Yeah, no, this one.
Anyway,
so...
yes, thank you, Faux Iconoclast, for $20.
Thank you.
And also, yeah, I mean, our APAC handlers know we're here because I always post a link to the show in the GC where all of our APAC handlers are.
Send them a little linky link. Yeah, but hey, you guys want to check us out? You'll know we've got IPAC handlers whenever the super chats start rolling.
Really rolling. That's it. BB. Papa BB. Papa BB need those soups.
Okay, now to touch this one. What would Gary Allen think of the recent trend on the right of treating Nixon as a kind of right-wing JFK figure? That is something that I had a chance to ask him. I asked Pat Buchanan what he thought about it one time, and this was one of my conversations with Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan obviously was a fan because he was Richard Nixon's speechwriter, Richard Nixon's first guy that gave him a job. But the other guys that were involved, like the Nelson Bunker Hunt crew and everything, they were not fans of it at all. And and some of these guys knew Richard Nixon, so I would ask him sometimes. I'd be like, you know, because I would like sit around and they would talk about Reagan this, Reagan that, Reagan this, Reagan that. And I was like, you'll ever meet Richard Nixon? And they were like, yeah, why? And we were like, I was like, what was he like? And they were like, there was no there. You know, and I'm like, okay. And that was the end. That's the only thing that I ever say about it. They were not Nixon people. And actually, like, I was paid contract work. I was paid a number of times to go to like actually produce opposition media pieces, oppositional white papers, contra the very people that I'm now nominally on their side, I guess, at the Claremont Institute and that sort of thing, specifically because of the Nixon revisionism. Like, it burned them deeply. They hated it because of the Nixon revisionism. You have to remember, most of these guys are George Wallace guys. So that's really, that's really where a lot of this is. Oh my God, we should do some George Wallace shit.
That's it's not really like the theme of the show.
No, it's weird history, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. But I kind of prefer ones with more violence.
Yeah, I can't think of any good. There's actually not very much good material on Wallace either.
Yeah. Yeah, you just only have like kind of like barn burner primary sources, like a list of speeches and shit. But other than that, it's pretty thin.
So there's only one good biography, and it's called The Politics of Rage, and it's like super kind of vanilla flavored. Like, it's a very good book, but it's not very entertaining.
Tragic. Let's see. Okay. To the insiders, the world is their country, and their loyalty is to themselves and their fellow conspirators. Being an American means no more to them than being an honorary citizen of Bali would mean to you. It has not bothered their consciences one iota that millions of your fellow human beings have been murdered, including 50,000 of your own sons in Vietnam. In order to solidify their power in the United States, they will need to do here the same thing they have done in other countries. They will establish and maintain their dictatorship through stark terror. The terror does not end with the complete takeover of the Republic. Rather, then terror just begins. For total, all-encompassing terror is an absolute necessity to keep a dictatorship in power. And terror does not mean merely punishing the enemies of the New World Order. Terror requires the murdering and imprisoning of people at random, even many of those who helped them come to power. Those who are complacent and hope to escape the terror because they were not involved in politics or resisted the New Order coming to power must be made by you to understand that this all-encompassing need for terror includes them especially, that they cannot escape by doing nothing. Honestly, this is stochastic terrorism. He's doing pretty well here, but this call to action could easily have resulted if he had a less order-minded type of audience. Could have easily resulted in some actions.
Right. No, I mean, and actually, we've been making fun of this book quite a bit, but I would like to point out, we've been making fun of it in the context that this is what everyone on the right side of the political spectrum believes now. So ultimately, this book is very fucking successful. But what did it take? You put your finger right on the damn button. What did it take? It took the advent of a generation that is considerably less order-minded. That would be millennials. That is what the alt-right was. It was people who were high in openness, high in disagreeability, and were okay with levels of chaos heretofore unseen in the conservative world. That was exactly what
people
it took.
People who were right-wing but not conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally not conservative.
Right.
Those who are complacent and hope to escape the terror because they were not involved in politics or resisted the New Order coming to power must be made by... Oh, sorry, I already said this. What can we expect from the conspiracy during the next few years? Here are 14 signposts on the road to totalitarianism, compiled some years ago by historian Dr. Warren Carroll, and a refugee from Yugoslavian communism, Mike Djordjevic.
Now you know this is my little bugbear, don't you? That the conservative movement just like ingested all of these people just because they were fleeing communist countries without ever really bothering to check and see if there was a good reason they were fleeing communist countries. Like, it's like maybe there was a reason these communist countries are after them. And so like, as a result, the American right ingested quite a bit of Trotskyism, and that's probably what we're about to get right here. So I'm just gonna lay. This is a very Trotskyite. This is a very Eastern Central European mid 20th century coded thing to do, to lay out a 14-point plan that you can expect. Very ballsy move on Gary and Larry's part here to predict the future, especially since they've already tried to do it once, and what a mess, Let's see how they do.
The list is not in any particular order, nor is it the order of any particular significance as given here. But the imposition of any one of these new restrictions on liberty, none of which was in effect when the list was compiled, would be a clear warning that the totalitarian state is very near. And once a significant number of them, perhaps 5, have been imposed, we can rationally conclude that the remainder would not be far behind, and that the fight for freedom and preservation of the republic has been lost in this country. The 14 signposts to slavery. Number 1, restrictions on taking money out of the country and on the establishment or retention of a foreign bank account by an American citizen.
We don't even prevent non-American citizens from doing that.
It's actually American citizens have more restrictions on their opening of foreign bank accounts than non-citizens have of opening American bank accounts.
Yeah, that's true.
Those laws, which are, broadly under the anti-money laundering rules, really, really went into effect post 9/11. So most of the last safeguards for foreign banking really closed as part of the Patriot Act. 2, abolition of private ownership of handguns. Okay. 3, detention, and really it's not handguns. It's really what they want to get rid of are rifles. Right? It seems like that's what all of the bans are actually.
But just one of the things that's interesting is that compared to the time when this book was written, gun rights are incredibly liberal. It was more at the time. No, at the time there were serious restrictions on the ability to get a handgun. In particular, they had, I guess we were on the space the other night where we were talking about 25 ACPs, and like if you could like listen through John D's wailing about anytime somebody brings up guns, they were talking a lot about how the supply of 20, in particular the ammunition, 25 ACP pistols, it's very different. There's only 2 manufacturers, and there's only a couple of models of 25 ACP pistols. This was a result of legislation in the 1950s or the 1960s, I can't remember which, to crack down on the circulation of a variant of pistols they called Saturday Night Specials, which were the ones that. And so, like, there were actually compared to now. It's weird. In some ways, gun rights were more liberal than they were. Guns were easier to get, so you could walk into a hardware store, and there would be just a barrel of M1 Garand rifles sitting there, and you could get one for like $30, but pistols, handguns in particular, were not as easy to get as they are now. It's much easier to get a handgun now than it was then, but more difficult to get a rifle. So weird stuff moving both directions there.
3, detention of individuals without judicial process. Well, depends on who those individuals are.
Right.
4, requirements that private financial transactions be keyed to social security numbers or other government identifications so that the government records of these transactions can be kept and fed into a computer. Okay, well, we've clearly well and truly lost that one.
Yeah, that one's over.
Yeah. 5, use of compulsory education laws to forbid attendance at presently existing private schools. If anything, things have gone our direction in that one.
They did go the other way for a while though, and then came back.
Well, and in Europe,
Yeah.
there's a huge move to ban both private schooling and homeschooling.
Yeah.
Huge moves to ban that shit in Europe. So,
but if you're tracking the emergence of like the themes that the conservative, I mean, if you remember last week, I pulled up that article that I wrote about the different party systems. These are the things. Whenever I pointed out that there's major consensus around foreign policy, banking policy, and that sort of thing, and like what's left are a lot of these like little boutique culture issues, like homeschooling. And this is one of the reasons why homeschooling is such a bedrock issue for conservatives. Like, you know, it's bigger than maybe it should be, but
yeah,
it is an issue that the conservatives have thoroughly won on in the United States.
Yeah. Compulsory non-military service. So like sort of like the CCC, right?
Which I'm a huge fan of, and I think we should bring back.
I'm not necessarily against it. I don't think the
CCC was ever compulsory, though.
No, it wasn't, but it was a jobs program. But a lot of when people say, I think that, you know, we should make it so that people have to do mandatory service in the United States, but it doesn't have to be the military. It could be, you know, some other thing. It could be the federal, you know, some jobs program or whatever.
They can't even float. That's so beyond the pale. They can't even get that. They can't even get that shit through in the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom is significantly more authoritarian than the United States.
Way more.
People are usually down for the idea of bringing back jobs programs. Like, actually, no, they really aren't. We're still, that's still one of my more vanguard type positions. But I do spend a lot of time around the kind of people who are into that sort of thing. You are sort of starting to see a little bit. Like RFK, for instance, is really big into the idea of a new CCC. But it's actually probably still not very popular at all among the normies or, you know, whatever. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Let's see. Frosty Swifter, don't they have curriculum requirements for private schools in many areas to steer them? Yeah, they do. And they're like accrediting bodies so that your stuff can apply to to schooling in conventional schools should the kids or parents ever decide to transfer in. There are multiple bodies, and actually, like again, like the United States educational system for that level, for like elementary school and so on, is pretty profoundly liberal. Like liberal in the general sense of liberal. Like you actually do have a lot of options that are viable. Like you could send your kids. I mean, you can send your kids to a Montessori or a Goddard or a Waldorf school, for until they're high school age, right? It's a completely different educational system, like radically different from.
And there's actually a short possibility. I don't know that like. Actually, the amount of freedom that you have in education in the United States today might actually scare Gary and Larry, and they might write another book about the possibility of communist training camps if the federal government doesn't crack down on education. That's actually how thoroughly towards choice this particular issue has shifted. Like it might surprise and scare them how little actual control there is.
Right. Let's see. Compulsory psychological treatment for non-government workers or public school children. I'm gonna count crooning as being that, but so much worse than they could have believed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
8. An official declaration that anti-communist organizations are subversive and subsequent legal action taken to suppress them. Well, that certainly used to be a thing. Yeah, I mean, just not de facto, not de jure, but de facto. That is the case, right? Or it was for a very long time. Maybe it's not so much so right now, but you know, if the seas change, then it would come back immediately. It was definitely like that for the past 4 years. 9, laws limiting the number of people allowed to meet in a private home. Hey, was there a time, thinking back maybe 5 or so years ago, can you think of a time where such a law was broadly enforced throughout the country?
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot all about that. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, we didn't know the 5-year anniversary of the lockdowns passed without note.
You know, and I think this is one of these things actually where possibly the decline of conservatism is because, like, it's really, you know, it's really based on, it's intrinsically based on a lot of these mythologies, and like some of these mythologies came to pass and nobody did any of the things that the conservatives said we were going to do. And so, like, I think that's why conservatism started to really fade in favor of in favor of full bore Trumpism, because, like, yeah, some of this stuff happened, and then the conservative response was nothing.
Nothing.
You know? Yeah.
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. 10. Any significant change in passport regulations to make passports more difficult to obtain or use. That didn't happen. Definitely didn't happen. 11. Wage and price controls, especially in a non-wartime situation. Other than Nixon really was the last one, wasn't he? The way that we control wages is the way that we suppress wages is by importing infinity migrants. So
yeah,
it's not,
and
you know,
and he's the first guy. He's the first guy that sort of signed on with that. That's a Nixon era thing. Is like
infinity migrants.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We don't need to go there though. I don't want to offend the super chat sneeders.
Let's see. 12. Any kind of compulsory registration with the government of where individuals work. Wow. Did you literally not have to fucking did the W-2 exist? It might not have.
It might not have, actually. Let me look.
I'm pretty sure people still had to pay fucking taxes in the 70s.
W-2 form.
Or
no,
1099, like you still had to pay taxes.
It was established by the current Tax Payment Act of 1943. But I mean, it is true. And this is one of those things that's very difficult for Americans, especially our generation is really the first one that has a hard time contextualizing this. How much bullshit you could actually get away with before. I mean, this is like the same decade where, you know, Ted Bundy is going to get away with killing 70 women or some shit like that. Like interstate, enforcement of these sorts of things. The only way you would really get pinged for not paying taxes in the 1970s is if you suddenly came into a lot of money and there was a reason to look at you. It's like there was the database systems that keep track of people were not, and the IRS was not as well funded. It's not as big of an organization as it is now. You could reasonably get away with not, and there was a lot more cash payment going on as well. There was a lot more people were getting paid
cash.
Cash.
That's for sure. A lot more cash.
So it was much easier to do things like tax evasion in the 1970s than it is now.
Let's see. 13. Any attempt to restrict freedom of movement within the United States. So you still don't have to display your passport at state borders.
Unless you're from Louisiana.
What?
Well, it's not that bad, but we do have we have an ID that is not recognized by a lot of states. And it caused me problems when I was in Tennessee recently, whenever I was up there for the OGC thing.
That's so weird.
I tried to buy cigarettes and they wouldn't take my ID.
Wild. It's because it just looks fake.
It's like it scans funny and it doesn't look fake, but
scans Creole.
I don't know what the fuck it is. But like I do have to use my passport. I mean, I maybe not anymore, but like whenever I was flying a lot a couple of years ago and I had a Louisiana ID and like TSA would go fucking nuts sometimes. So I would just use my passport. Yeah.
Wild. 14. Any attempt to make a new major law by executive decree that is actually put into effect, not merely authorized as by existing executive orders. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm gonna say DACA? DACA. That would be the first one, right?
DACA?
Yeah. Basically the Dreamers Act.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was Dreamers. Then yeah.
The Dreamers Act didn't pass, and then Obama just like did it via executive order.
Yeah.
And then Trump was not allowed to undo it via executive order in his first term.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Yeah, that would be the one. All right. So, we're a lot more. And let's see. As you are no doubt aware, President Nixon has already invoked numbers 1, 11, and 14. So restrictions on taking money out of the country. Okay. Wage and price controls. Okay. Yeah, of course he did. And any attempt to make a major law. I don't know what he did that was like a novel executive order.
What do you think?
But I'll believe you. Gerald Allen.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm not a Nixonist, unfortunately.
Steps 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 12, and 13 have already been proposed, and some are actively campaigned for by organized groups. Obviously, all of this is actively campaigned for by organized groups. As of January 1st, 1972, banks must report to the government any deposit withdrawal over $5,000. Now it's 10, by the way. The next step will be to restrict taking of money out of the country. Big Brother is watching your bank account. Increased government control over many kinds of private schools is proposed annually in many state legislatures. Compulsory non-military service, a universal draft of all young men and women with only a minority going into the armed services, has been discussed by the Nixon administration as an alternative to the draft. Sensitivity training is already required for an increasing number of government workers, teachers, and school children. As long ago as 1961, Victor Reuther proposed that anti-communist groups and organizations must be investigated and placed on the Attorney General's subversive list. The propaganda war in progress to force registration or confiscation of firearms is the number one priority of all the collectivists. And armed citizenry is the major roadblock to a totalitarian takeover of the United States.
Now, let me see if I can pull this engram up, because this one is actually. Let me make sure it looks as good.
Are you looking for sensitivity training?
Okay, no. This is one that's very interesting because I've used it as an example before. So sensitivity training. We're going to use that as the first one. Sensitivity training, and then comma. We're going to use inclusivity as the other one. And this is an interesting example of how you can watch the memes. Oh, fucking beautiful. Yeah. How do I do this? How do I make it? How do I show my shit? Okay.
How I show my shit.
Okay, share screen. Which one? I don't want y'all to see. How much of my shit do I want y'all to be able to see?
It's just going to share the frame if you use the built-in thing in StreamYards.
Yeah, which one is it though? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, can you see it? So you can see. Yeah, you can see sensitivity training. This is an example. So sensitivity training was a program that came out of, look at that. Oh my God, 1955. What was going on in 1955?
Boomers getting born. I don't know what was going on. Yeah.
What was our old buddy doing at the time?
Oh, Jolyon?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of MK Ultra.
So sensitivity training is an MK Ultra adjacent concept that was road tested under the guise of sensitivity training, and you can watch it gets more and more frequent, and it peaks in 1971, and so you don't hear about it very much. It was considered to be kind of a meme that didn't work, and so it dissipates again. You can watch this over then like
early life check on Jolly on West Wonderland Shadow.
Yeah, look where. Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, 1996 is where we get that. 1996 is where what happened in What was happening in the mid 90s?
The FBI was going fucking ham.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, and then you get kind of a code switch was what happens, and the same ideas emerge as inclusivity, and then it just absolutely takes off.
The mid 90s really was the last high watermark for PC stuff.
Yeah.
Political correctness was.
Actually, let's add that one as well. Political correctness, and I'm betting we're going to see two separate peaks. Interesting.
I feel like I'm shocked that political correctness didn't fall off harder.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone says that. I feel like nobody says that anymore. I feel like no one said that since the aughts.
Interesting. I don't have a lot to say about this, so we're gonna call this one on. We get 5 points for style on sensitivity training, and then we started bleeding our score down for we're just under profit status.
Yep. All right. You are in this fight whether you want to believe it or not. Unless you are an insider, you are a victim. Whether you are a multimillionaire or a pauper, you have an enormous amount at stake. The insiders are counting on your being too preoccupied with your own problems or too lazy to fight back while the chains of slavery are being fastened on you. They are counting on their mass media to con you, frighten you, or ridicule you out of saving your freedom. And most of all, they are counting on your thinking you can escape by not taking part in opposing their takeover. They are also counting on those of you who recognize the conspiracy becoming so involved with watching all moves that you become totally mesmerized by their machinations and thus become incapable of acting.
You can just do things. You can just do
things. Yeah, that's right. The choice is yours. You can say, it can't happen here. But nearly every one of the 1 billion people enslaved by the communists since 1945 doubtless said the same thing. Or except they said it in some sort of bullshit local language. Let's see. The choice is your or you can end run this whole conspiratorial apparatus. The choice you must make was enunciated by Winston Churchill when he told the people of England, "If you will not fight when you can easily win without bloodshed, then you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly. You may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival." Because we have ignored warning after warning, we are now at that place in history. Unless you do your part now, you will face a further choice. Also described by Mr. Churchill, he said, "There may be an even worse fate. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves." What will you do? If you are unwilling to get involved because you feel it may be bad for business or may jeopardize your social respectability, just look into the eyes of your children and tell them that making a buck and climbing the social ladder are more important to you than they are. Wow, this one did not land well with the boomers.
No, it didn't. And no, it didn't. Also, by the way, your Churchill's sliding around a little bit. Right?
It is. My Churchill has never been great, but yeah. It changed between the two. I think the second one was better.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah. Let's see. This is the end of our case. If you have decided not to do anything about it, then you can close this book, read no further, and turn out the light. That is just what you will be doing for the United States of America, and may God help us. And may He have mercy on your soul. If you decide that you will do something, M dash, that you at least are not yet controlled, read on. Pick up the ball we are tossing you, and with thousands of others, let's end run the conspiracy. Here's how. Oh man, you get the hard call. You get the hard sell now. This is the one. Here's how. The 4 keys in this program are: 1, you. What you do now is, of course, the key to this whole operation. If you delay, your motivation will wane, your concern will recede, but the danger will increase. Remember, the insiders don't care how much you know about their conspiracy so long as you don't do anything about it. So keep reading and then act. 2, this book. None dare call it conspiracy. In writing this book, we have tried to give you a concise overall picture of the nature of the conspiracy. We wrote it not only to explain the conspiracy, but to give you a complete program of action now so that the many yous around the country would not necessarily have to be articulate salesmen to make your end run. You can simply pass this book out and let it do the job for you. The conspiracy may be able to stifle publicity on this book and keep it off the magazine rack at your local supermarket, but they can't stop you from distributing it to friends, neighbors, relatives, and business associates, and especially at your precinct. With a potential 30 million distribution of this book to those mentioned above, and in a manner yet to be described, you will create a base of opinion that will throw the insiders out. So you have to actively proselytize. That was their business model. You are going to be a Hare Krishna. You are going to be passing out the ISKCON translation of the Bhagavad Gita, which is this book, to everyone who will take it out of your hands and maybe not immediately throw it on the ground.
Is that the orange one?
What?
That copy of the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
Okay, okay. This was the first one I read, and it's not a very good one, actually.
It's not a good one. It's not the one. It is the most common one, or was for a very long time.
It's got all, I mean, like, I feel like everybody that went to college between like 1995 and 2015, at least, like was like sitting on campus stoned one day, and like were like goaded into purchasing one for $6.
Oh my God. I had a guy try to do that to me. I remember I was sitting in the quad and he was like, "Hey, I want you to have this." And he handed it to me.
Then he asked you for money.
Yeah. And I was like, "You gave it to me."
Yeah. Exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I look over my left shoulder.
I still have that copy, and I also have my real translation of the Gita.
I looked over my left shoulder, and there it was, staring at me. Still, 15 years later, I've still got that thing.
That's like the one you kept. That's like one of the books you kept in all of your transient like moves. You kept the Hare Krishna version of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, I have. There's some really strange ones that have stuck with me.
Interesting.
It's another weird one. It's like, this book Jennifer Egan wrote. You probably don't even know who Jennifer Egan is. She was like
I know Greg Egan.
When I was in my undergraduate literature, because I was in one of my undergraduate degrees is literature. There was a feeble attempt to incorporate contemporary MFA style literature into the curriculum. And one of these books we had to read was this terrible thing by this woman named Jennifer Egan called Visit from the Goon Squad, which the only thing that's really interesting about it is it was like one of the first attempts to like incorporate digital media into a novel. And so there's like a whole section of it that's just a printed out PowerPoint. It's fucking terrible. But for some reason I've still got it,
Is that a reference to The Princess Bride? The title?
It's gotta be.
It's gotta be. I do like The Princess Bride. That's one of my like slop. One of my like deeply held slop.
I don't think it's slop. I think it's like a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are. Yeah,
it can just be good. Like it can just be good. All right. It is quite possible that in distributing this book, questions will come up concerning certain statements and conclusions with which you are not able to deal. There are a number of organizations that have well-documented material on all subjects raised in this book. But after considerable personal research, the author has concluded that the organization which is the leader in this field, has the most experience, and is doing the best job of exposing the conspiracy is, you guessed it, the John Birch Society. Doesn't it appear strange that this organization, which works towards decentralization of political power and the exposure of insiders, should be so vilified by the mass media, while the Council on Foreign Relations, which promotes centralization of power in the hands of a few within a world government, is practically never mentioned? So contact the John Birch Society for further backup information. Belmont, Massachusetts, the zip code, San Marino, California, or check your telephone directory for the nearest American Opinion bookstore. 3. That is so like cute, actually. Like, here are our addresses.
Send clip out the coupons.
Clip out the coupon in the back and send it in with 38 cents and personally addressed return. Yeah. 3, your precinct. The precinct is the lowest denominator in our political structure. Any politician will agree that whoever reaches and influences the most people in the precinct wins the election. When you break down the job to be done to the least common denominator, it doesn't seem to be nearly as big a job as when you look at all those millions of votes that need to be switched. Many elections are won or lost by less than 5 votes per precinct. Remember that every vote switched you can accomplish by planting the seed with your book really amounts to 2 votes, as it takes one from the other side.
So not true.
This is really not how that works. Start your own end run in your own precinct now. Lists of registered voters are available from your county registrar. With everyone working within his own precinct, the hit and miss efforts of prior years will be avoided, and organization will be added to this effort. A blanket coverage of your precinct will create talk between neighbors on this subject and thereby greatly increase the number of persons reading this book. Let's see.
So one of the things that's interesting is the number of, I've used it a number of times over the course of this series. The phrase end run. I told you I used to work for this exact cluster of people, and they use that phrase end run all the damn time.
I like it. I like it. I like end run.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun, but they use it all the time, and so do I, and that's who I picked it up from.
Yeah, I mean, end running is just defecting. It's just not playing the game according to the presumed rules. So, let's see. Wonderland Shadow for $5. Y'all should have a 2-day marathon where you watch episodes 1 through 4 of True Detective the first night and 5 through 8 the second night. Why wouldn't we just do a 1-day marathon where we watch the whole fucking thing?
It's going to take a lot more than $5 to get me to do that.
Yeah, but isn't that's what? That's so it's an 8 hours, right? Or hour-long episodes.
That's a whole different show, also. That's a drive time movie.
Yeah, that is drive time movie night for sure.
There's a whole other show in the Tookies Mag ecosystem devoted to that concept.
That's right. That's my other show. Not Sandbatch's, although Sandbatch is by far our most common guest.
Yeah, it's. John D is going to accost you with a proposal for me because I made him. I told him the only condition in which I would watch the film Wild at Heart was if we did it on Drive Time Movie Night. So, like,
amazing. So John D will come back. Lovely.
My fate is in your hands here. I really don't want to watch Wild at Heart, actually, for a number of reasons. But I will. If you all decide that, like, making me cry on live broadcast is a good thing to do, because I have a feeling I'll cry. It's just a sneaking suspicion I'll cry.
Wonderland Shadow, you are saying that I can't do it for some reason, even though that's a show that I do. I don't understand. Although, actually, you know what? I will say that Mike of Pole and I have been talking about doing like a weekend marathon stream of some kind, and our unfortunately it doesn't actually fall on a weekend, but but if July 7th, so 7/7, had fallen on a weekend, we would have tried to get Thomas 777 to watch The Magnificent Seven and Seven Samurai with us
Oh man.
on
Oh
July
man.
7th.
Yeah.
So sadly though, it does not work out that way. And the next July 7th that's on a weekend is in many years from now. So yeah. So in any case, for your congressman, you have now completed the 3 simple basic moves in your end run. Barring a wholesale awakening by the American people, it is probably wishful thinking to believe that CFR's hold on the presidency can be broken in 1972. But it is possible to block the insiders' men in the House of Representatives. Congress can still lift a powerful voice against the conspiracy, if only it would. This is such like normie con, like, we can solve this through the electorate. Like, we have to win elections. That's the way. That's your big plan.
That was it. I mean, of course, it was a fresher strategy at the time. I can like kind of not fault them, you know, like this is really only the second, maybe the third time Con Inc. has gone to bat. And so we can kind of, and like it was there was a lot of like static in the signal the first couple of times with like political assassinations and major wars and that sort of thing. So I could kind of cut them some slack here.
Sure. But anyway, Congress can still lift a powerful voice against a conspiracy, if only it would. It can also throw a searchlight onto the Council on Foreign Relations stranglehold on the executive branch of government. No burglar tries to rob a house when a spotlight is on him. With your effort, Congress can be that spotlight. It is at the congressional level that the conspiracy can be delayed, at least until there is sufficient strength to rout it. But your local congressional candidate must be forced to take a public stand on the Council on Foreign Relations, its goals, and its power in the federal government. And once your candidate is elected, you must make sure that he does not submit to the incredible pressure which will be put upon him in Washington to compromise his principles. The congressman for whom you are laying the base for elections must be as steadfast in Washington as he is at home in personal conversation with you. Keep in mind that a congressman must return to his constituents every 2 years for reapproval. How would you like to be a congressman who had voted for any one of the 14 signposts to slavery, asking to be elected by constituents who had read None Dare Call It Conspiracy? It is therefore easier to keep a congressman on the straight and narrow than a senator or a president. The latter run less frequently than the congressman and represent tremendously larger geographical areas. Although it is not easy, it is still possible for a good congressman to finance his campaign from within his district and not be dependent on the insiders for campaign contributions. That much is true. That is true. If there are no congressional candidates worth supporting in your area at this time, support one or more in other areas. Never contribute money to the Republican or Democratic National Committee. That money, except in token amounts, will never reach anti-Council on Foreign Relations establishment candidates, most of whom suffer from a severe shortage of funds, at least until they are well established. Only contribute your campaign dollars to those who are committed to fighting the conspiracy. A candidate running on good conservative principles is not enough. We've had many such candidates, and although most of them are very good men, they never come to grips with the real problem, exposing those behind the world socialist movement. So organize your end run, pass out your books, and then keep your eagle eye on your congressman and his voting record. This end run concept we are suggesting is not just a game we are playing, even though we use a football term. To summarize, you do not necessarily have to be an articulate salesman to make this end run. It's like every sentence now. It's like every sentence.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's a little bit poetic. It's like it's peppering it in there. Boom, 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 boom. You know,
you do
end
not
run,
necessarily.
end run.
Yeah, you do not necessarily have to know all the ins and outs of the total conspiracy. The book is intended to do this for you.
You don't need to know all the ends and runs. You can do an end run without knowing the ends and runs.
Just run the end until the end is run.
It's like a football game. You're just
and
a
your
player
runs
on the field.
at an end.
Yeah, we're the coaches, and we've got a plan. You know,
all you have to do is find the wherewithal to purchase the book, and one way or another, see that you blanket your precinct with them. Then force your congressman to stand up to the CFR establishment. It is simple. It is straightforward. It is a workable plan. With 30 million end runs being made during 1972, you can and will rout the conspiracy, turn the tide of history, and prevent the enslavement of yourself and your family. Remember, seeds planted in 1972 will pay off not only this year, but in 1974 and 1976. If we do not build a large counter-revolutionary base in 1972, the ballgame will be lost by 1976. Oh, no.
It took me to look. Okay, yeah, go. It is true. They did, and I talked about this before. They did, in fact, build a large, what they're referring to here is they did, between them and the Yippies, the leftist coalition that they spent a lot of this book talking about, they did in fact smash what existed of the power structure in 1974. That's like that whole the Watergate babies. So they did it, you know. But the problem is then that they then set up an possibly more fucked bipartisan consensus than
more fucked.
Yeah, because it was a bipartisan consensus that the only thing that it agreed on was to privatize everything. So, like, as bad as the bipartisan consensus was in the late New Deal era, it at least still had like functioning state systems, like functioning like state service systems. The thing that the Watergate babies all agreed on was that shit could better be handled via private contract, by a government contract dispersal out. And again, a reminder, the thing I used to do was work in GSA contracting. And I got that gig through these people that believed in privatizing everything. So like they did, in fact, affect the shift. You know, it was just not, you know, if you have two, they made it worse. That's the only thing that's what they did. They made it worse. Oh man. JJ wants to know how much we're into numerology now.
Yeah, Wonderland Shadow for $5. How much are y'all into numerology? Well, I'm not like super well versed into gematria, but I find it extremely fun. I will say that much. But
I have spent the last 2 weeks taking this book that I said I finished 2 weeks ago and rearranging it such that it comes out in such a way that there are 7 sections and 33 total poetic cycles in it.
Oh my God.
I spend quite a bit of time on numerology.
Did you work in any sort of internal ciphers into your poems?
Yes.
Okay, of course you fucking did.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. What is did you do any sonnets? Sonnets are very numerologically rich.
There are 3 sonnets.
Oh, of course.
2 terzarimas, a sestina, and then there's a lot of Spanish forms that like haven't ever really been used in English, and those were interesting. I had to do some things with the Spanish forms because Spanish tends to want to use octosyllabics, and I did a trade-off there. I kept the rhyme scheme and moved it into iambics because we would do a lot of consonant rhyme in English, and there were some things that had to be done. But
so how do you deal with the 6 7s in the 42 lines of 3 14-line sonnets?
I thought about it.
Okay.
I had to think about it, and I converted one of them into a caudate sonnet to alleviate. So you know what a caudate sonnet is?
I don't.
Yeah, it's kind of an obscure one, but it's a sonnet that then has a sestet and two rhymed couplets at the end. So this caudate means with a tail, so it's a sonnet with a tail. But yeah, I did. Sonnets are hard, by the way. Sonnets are not easy to write. Like, actually, you might be able to sit down. Anybody sitting here might be able to sit down and hammer spit out something that's sonnet-ish. But
Sonnetesque.
Yeah, like to me, like, you know, because Tom Will is another poet that's like another one of the guys that's like, you know, in the scene in a way. He's like a god to me because he wrote a whole fucking book of them. Like sonnets are massively difficult. They're very cool though, and yes, sonnets are very occult. And they have occult elements all up in them. But yeah, no, I mean, of course, yeah. Anybody who's really into poetry is also likely to be into numerology, because that's where all of these poetic forms that we just think of today is like, okay, that's going to be a terza rima, it's going to be iambic trimeter, it's going to be one of these things back and forth. That is all numerological. Like it's like literally John Dee like chanting incantations in like numbered syllables and lines, and that is where a lot of these forms come from. Shakespeare is not better than Milton. Shakespeare's sonnets are better than Milton's though, and it's Milton's sonnets are not great. But I don't hate Shakespeare. I don't hate on Shakespeare. I never hate on Shakespeare.
They're good.
Yeah, Shakespeare's so good, so good.
He is. Shakespeare's so good.
So are we going to call it conspiracy now?
We are going to call it conspiracy in a minute here. So I
would also like to point out
he does this great thing where he like names them, where he just publishes the current list of, or at the time of publishing, it's the members of the Council on Foreign Relations who are in who are among Nixon's nominees. So pretty based maneuver, not gonna lie. It's like a list of Biden cabinet members with stars of David over their faces.
Yeah. With I love, this is one of my favorite things about conservative right-wing populist messaging, is that occasionally it will just totally lose its cool and throw an illegal immigrant through the window, you know, and like that's one of the better moves. It's like,
oh my god, Robert O. Blake, ambassador to Mali. Fucking
what do you
you know, one time Sandbatch got declared the ambassador to Mali, but it was a different kind of thing.
Oh my god. You know, I've always said that my highest political ambition was to be, and you're going to immediately recognize where I got this from, where I said my highest political ambition is to become the American governor of American Samoa.
Oh my god, amazing. Would be a great job. It'd be a great gig.
That was another one I picked up from Hunter S. Thompson. That was one of his demands, and one of his screeds to Richard Nixon. He demanded to be made governor of American Samoa.
I look, honestly, like one of the best things you could do for early supporting a candidate is to get an ambassador appointment, right?
I've worked
ambassador appointment is one of the sickest fucking gigs you could get.
Yeah, no, it really is. You don't do jack shit. You're just
I did some work with a guy who is a former ambassador to a small European nation. And he was like the fucking chillest. He had absolutely he had no worries in his life. So
one of the guys I worked for was a former ambassador to Morocco, of all places. And then I've worked with a guy that's kind of a. It's pretty well. It's I fundraised
for you for this.
This was during the Reagan administration that he was that, and he had built like a pretty substantial like private book of business. But I also like one time did some work with the American ambassador to Croatia, that one was kind of interesting. He was a very strange individual.
Croatia is full of very strange individuals. Mm-hmm. I mean, it should probably be wiped off the map, to be honest with you. But you know, it is apparently in terms
He's trying
of
to incite the chat.
Crime. I'm trying to see if Gabe is in chat.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Just bothering our resident Croat.
Yeah, he's actually flipped everything off. He's watching videos of Rupi Kaur's feet and listening to Digital Archipelago. Which, by the way, yeah,
he's definitely like DA in the left ear, like sounds of feet squishing through some sort of oobleck gel in the other ear.
It's just a fascinating thing. I've been on Digital Archipelago twice and have seen no other episodes of it. I've seen.
That is so rude. That is so rude.
I don't listen to content. I mean,
you're like a guy. It's like a guy who goes to an open mic night and leaves as soon as you've done your shitty.
Do that too. I do that too. I do that too.
That's the equivalent of pulling the cart out of the cart return and not using it. Like,
I don't do that at open
inexcusable.
I don't do that at open poetry readings, but I will do it at like if I've been like invited or something like, and which does happen. I get invited or something, and if there's no hot bitches there, then I'll find some excuse to leave.
Ain't no hot bitches.
I'm not a terribly social person. It's like one of those things. I'm kind of a curmudgeon, and like, I literally live in the 19th century. So like, except I have this internet access, but like most of the day, I tweet so much that people would think I'm actually just an incredibly online person, but I'm not. I'm actually like always around. I'm like always doing things, but
incredibly online person with a weekly incredibly online show declares himself not an incredibly online person.
Yeah, I mean, I am incredibly online, but it's like happening on the go more often than people think it is. And like Ham actually asked me the other day when we were in space together, he's like, how are you so prodigious in writing? I'm like, this is actually what I do, because I wake up in the morning and I sit down at a desk and I start writing things. And that's what I'm doing most of the time. And and I'm like one of those people, I can't listen to content and I can't multitask. Like I have to do all kinds of strange things. Like whenever I'm Jamieing stuff up with us, like I have to focus out for a second and figure out what I'm doing and then tune back in. I cannot multi-channel very well. So if the other thing is, whenever I listen to content, especially, God, it's really bad with women, but
such cases,
if there's a podcast with a woman that I know, I will like sit here and I'll respond out loud to them, as though they're in the room, and that's
I can't hear you through the TV, Dad.
Right, literally, and it pisses me off. So I end up not consuming a lot of content. But the way I got on this tangent was I was going to say there are 539 of you here. You all are holding strong against the Digital Archipelago behemoth.
That's right.
However, I am a little more disappointed.
Proud of you.
I am a little more disappointed that we're being outstreamed by King Salmonfish right now. Or no, that's King Pill.
That's real King Pill, bud.
Yeah, that's a different guy.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So let's see here. One weird thing about this list of CFR people is just that like a lot of them are like William R. Kintner, member of the board of foreign scholarships, right? Like these are, a lot of these are kind of bullshit, right? Which is the point, right? You put people in charge of stuff.
The CFR is a revolving door organization.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And I don't know.
Like, oh, this guy needs something to do for 2 years. All right, put him over here.
It's beautiful.
And then he just sort of like has. I mean, obviously he just has it in alphabetical order, but it's just very funny. It's like after that, it's Henry Kissinger, the
true.
Fucking shadow president.
Yeah. This is one thing that's really disappointing to me about the conservative movement. And I say this all the time. I think the Council on Foreign Relations is cool as hell for exactly this reason, because essentially what it is, it's a Rolodex of bros that like when opportunity comes up, it's like, okay. And I like the guy that I work most directly for I mean, this actually happened to him. He was on vacation in Greece, and this was in the early 90s. He was on vacation in, I don't know, I don't even care. He wouldn't even
Keep going.
Yeah, he was on vacation in Greece with his son. Okay, and this is like he only had 2 kids. It's his son and a daughter. Daughter was at home. He was on vacation in Greece with his son, and this was during the Clinton administration. So this is this is again, he was the youngest elected Republican in South, not a Clinton fan at all. But the way this shit sort of worked out, Slobodan Milosevic agrees to come to the negotiating table, and because the 1990s were not as it was more archaic than we tend to think of at the time. This guy that I work for, he's in Greece. He's the closest person that the U.S. government feels has the gravitas to go negotiate with Slobodan Milosevic. And they call him on his phone in Greece and say, "Can you run up to Serbia and negotiate with this guy?" And he leaves his kid with the mayor of Argos and just flies up to be the guy who is opens the negotiations with Slobodan Milosevic. And that's how groups like the Council on Foreign Relations work. Just a Rolodex of people that you can trust, it's like, or the Underground Railroad, Masons. All of these things are incredibly important. And, and the conservative dislike of this kind of organization and network structure, I've been around, the OGC and everything since the very beginning. I'm really glad that the thinking on that sort of thing is starting to change, because that has been the biggest source of
it's the last bit of naivete leaving your body.
Yes.
The idea that being part of an organization that wields power but is not formally governmental,
right,
is in some way revolting to this is not how things are supposed to go, right? But they but it is how, in fact, they have always gone. That's how things do be going.
They do be going that way.
They do be going that way. So you have to be okay with these informal networks that cause power to actually be wielded in a single direction.
I would be willing to bet. And I mean, this is probably not new information. The vast majority of power is informal power. And I mean,
yes,
it's like a 90-10 split, really,
Yes, 100%. Yes. It's the hand on the finger that pushes the button that causes the bomb to fall, right? That is the true power, and all the that's the formal power, and all of the informal power is the one that picks whose finger that is. So, and when the button is pushed,
you want to be the finger picker, son.
You want to be the finger picker. Get you this banjo. You gonna learn.
FBI informant says, "Don't black pill."
Yep. Don't black pill. Let's see. Some of these are fun. Douglas MacArthur II, ambassador to Iran. Douglas MacArthur II was not Douglas MacArthur's son. He was Douglas MacArthur's
grandson.
Nephew.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. It'll work that way sometimes.
Yeah. Yep.
Charles A. Meyer. Let's see if there's any interesting names on here.
Dean Rusk.
Yeah. Frank Stanton. I don't see
the task force on international development are all of the big dicks swinging.
Yeah. Cool.
Adolf Schmidt, ambassador to Canada. Amazing. Amazing.
I wonder what that dude was like.
When your name is Adolf Schmidt, they just let you do it.
Yeah. Oh, and then Wonderland Shadow again. The truth is that if Russia were run by anyone but Vlad Putin, if the United States were run by anyone but Donald Trump right now, the whole world would be bathed in fire. That sounds like something I said, and it is indeed something I tweeted today. but I was behind my lock that I was hiding behind, and that is 100% true. I absolutely believe that Donald Trump is actually threading this. Well, until later this afternoon, he started kind of, I don't know. I'm going to trust the plan here a little bit. I think Donald Trump has done an incredible job of threading the needle here so far, though.
Would be so weird if he could avoid further hostilities by being unreasonably bellicose and blackpilling all of his supporters. It's just how it does.
This is like how things happen with Donald Trump, though. He's going to truth social his way out of American involvement in the Middle East.
He's going to truth it. Re-truth. Oh my God. Gary Allen. Oh, this was apparently he died in 86. He didn't survive Reagan. How do you think Gary Allen would have felt about how do you think Gary Allen would have felt about George H.W. Bush, former head of the CIA, becoming president?
I'm actually amazed he didn't mention George H.W. Bush. He wasn't a big deal at that time yet. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I guess he wasn't. But like, this is like he was there. He was, he was involved in shit. He was not an unknown entity, but it's true that he had not yet switched to the outside lane and made his play.
Yeah, he became the head of the. He became the head of the CIA in 76.
So it's coming. It's very. Yeah, he was still.
Actually, hold on. Young. Bush is not on here, right? Right.
Mm-mm.
Nope, not on here.
I don't know that he was ever in the CFR, because the CFR is actually a little crass for him. He was a real aristocrat, and he was involved in he was in intelligence. He was a global.
He was in. George H.W. Bush was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and a member of the Trilateral Commission.
So he was a member of both. When I say how long? Yeah,
he was the spook president.
Yeah. When did he join? I wonder. I have no idea. I bet there's no way to find that out. And he probably never said anything. One of the really interesting things about the what is the other group? Not the Bilderbergs. What is the Bohemian Grove?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan,
Skull and Bones.
Bob Weir from the Great.
Truly just bros, by the way.
Yeah.
Skull and Bones, truly just dudes being bros.
Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead was in the Bohemian Grove from 1972, which actually makes the strange overlap where he was a member of, this is the early 70s, remember? So this is a member of a MK Ultra aligned rock and roll group that nominally decried the criminalization of LSD and worked against the election of Ronald Reagan as early as 1972, have members of their band that are also in the same exclusive social club as Ronald Reagan. It's fascinating. And who else was there? Tucker's dad was also involved at the same time. Yeah. None dare call it conspiracy.
He wrote Kissinger, the secret side of the Secretary of State, the dark side of the Kissinger, the orb ruler. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of this book. So we've got, let's see. We've got another. So we're going to stop screen share. We're going to find another. Bam. Share.
I got to go refill my coffee. I'll be right back.
Here it is. So as everyone can see now, the part one to call it conspiracy is all of the parts of none dare call it conspiracy. So that's just the whole book. So the way that this works is that they released the book several years after, which I think was 84. And and it was published in I guess 83 maybe. So yeah, it's it's the DLC version. So you've got they expanded it, and we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll get through. I guess we've got some fertile ground to deal with. We've got Watergate, we've got Warren Commission ass Gerald Ford, we've got the Peanut Farmer, Mr. Jimmy Carter, and we've got Reagan, and I'm very interested to see if they come down on the side of Reagan. And so the person who wrote this, I don't know if Gary Allen contributed to it, to an early draft of it or something, but Larry Abraham is credited in the place of pride here, who was the assistant on the first one, and so one would assume that he did the lion's share of the lifting on the second half.
I'm gonna guess that both of these guys were ecstatic about, at least by the
83.
Maybe not. Okay, I now, like, where I'm not a Nixonist. I can only do Nixon stuff in broad strokes. I have dangerously granular knowledge on almost like the day by days of the Reagan administration, because I spent 4 years essentially listening to people who were there give their play. But now it had been filtered through 20 years of nonstop fish stories, fishing stories swappage back and forth. Right. But like, I know the Reagan stuff really well, like down, like almost like on a month by month basis. And so like the thing here is going to be whether or not
one time I showed up at work to the Oval Office a little early, and I heard some giggling from inside. I opened the door, and there old Ronnie was, Eiffel towering Nancy. Somehow he was able to bilocate to rail his own wife from both sides.
It's not that bad.
Spit roast. He was that kind of man.
It's
normally
not that
you don't get that kind of man nowadays. No man can spit roast his own
wife. No man spit roast his own wife like girl Ronnie could. But no, it's not that bad. But it is like stuff like how, like, there's like questions about how lucid Reagan was in his second term, and then like these guys would be like, oh, that was actually like he was forgetting the names of East Wing staffers in his first term.
Wild.
Like said, by the end of his second term, he was almost not there. But there's an interesting thing. So I've been talking about the growth of this movement conservatism, this thing that we call Con Inc. And really what it was is, okay, so after Watergate, the anti-Nixonites and the Nixonites and the anti-Nixonites kind of called a kind of truce. And the Wallace people, and I think I talked about the Southern. I just told a story that you will not find anywhere else on the internet or in any history book ever. The true story of exactly how the Southern strategy came about. I told it a couple of episodes back. You have to go back and find it, and you should need some super chats while you're at it. But there was a synthesis of these two groups that entwined to make what we would call movement conservatism. And after Ronald Reagan was elected, there was almost a night of the long knives, where the hardcore Wallaceites, the hardcore George Wallace supporters that had really been doing a lot of the field work, the on the ground field work to get Reagan elected, they suddenly got sidelined and by the think tankerati, like at the Claremont Institute and that sort of thing, the Heritage Foundation, so on and so forth. And they really resented it. And that's the group of people that became the paleocons. And they really resented this. And so like, I'm on the fence because these guys are super anti-Nixon.
People fucking hate getting rat fucked, it turns out.
Yeah. And they will hire Pat Casey 30 years later to tell the story in a podcast, but I would be willing to bet that they belong to this wing that gets railroaded by by movement conservative, and I bet we're going to start. I bet the word neoconservative starts creeping into this text. You know, what I would guess.
I will point and hold out my cocktail, and as Leonardo DiCaprio would, if we get neoconservatism.
Yeah. I bet it's
I'm gonna bet it's not. I'm gonna take the under on that one.
Ooh.
All right. So, first half, the book we just read. Second half, all new. And I don't know how long the prologue is, but maybe we can do the prologue before we cut out, and so we can start fresh. We are not going to read the fucking acknowledgments.
Randall, hold on. Randall Shirker, that book that says, I'm fairly certain many people are starting to accept that much of history is written in the informal social groups. Then again, I recently read Niall Ferguson's The Square in the Tower, one of the best books published in the 21st century so far, actually. That is an incredible text. Niall Ferguson's kind of cringe. He hit it out of the park on that one. That is an incredible book. And it is exactly about lateral networks versus lateral network formation against hierarchical power structures and how those two axes sort of, weave in and out of one another. So that's total endorse that book. That's an excellent text. Go ahead.
Very cool. Haven't read it, but yeah, sounds sweet. Let's see here. Prologue by Gary North. It used to be a great trivia question at conservative conferences. Name the two authors of None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Faces would go blank. The two authors? There was only one as far as anyone ever remembered, Gary Allen. And for how many years was my name confused with Gary Allen's? Too many. Writing the prologue to this book will only make the confusion worse. But there were two authors, as the hardback version proclaimed. Larry Abraham, a young man who at the time was enthusiastically fulfilling his last name's original meaning, Abraham, father of nations, had done much of the initial research. He never stopped doing his research, just as he never stopped working on fulfilling his name. He now has 11 children. Some of his grandchildren are older than his children.
Damn.
That is fucking wild. That dude lays pipe. Shout out. I mean, I realize we don't even need an early life check on Lawrence Abraham.
I wonder what his count's at now. He's probably still out there doing it.
Oh my God. It's just blasting dust and somehow still quickening wombs. He had dig up that guy's corpse, grind his bones down, and snort him, and they will make you virile beyond your wildest imaginings.
Right.
He gave a 3-hour speech on the subject of conspiracy, which Gary Allen heard. Gary suggested that they flesh out the presentation and make it into a book. Gary added his great skills as a writer, plus his own considerable knowledge of how things have really worked. Knowledge gained from a mountain of clippings and materials to produce the now famous little paperback book, which spread like wildfire in the early 1970s. How successful was the book? If the number printed and sold is any indication, very successful. It must have been at least 4 million copies. If longevity is any indication, very successful. People on my various mailing lists still send it to me from time to time in order to introduce me to the story of the conspiracy 15 years later. They want to make sure I don't overlook the real story. Where they find or buy these copies, I have no idea, but the book still circulates. Is there a used bookstore anywhere in America that doesn't include at least one copy somewhere on the shelves? Larry has at last revised it and brought it up to date. The events of the last 15 years have served Larry's thesis quite well. As far as Larry is concerned, the history of 1970 to 85 has been a kind of giant grab bag of goodies that reinforce his original thesis, not the least of which was the creation by David Rockefeller of the Trilateral Commission in 1973.
There we go.
That's right. And the creation by David Rockefeller of Jimmy Carter in 1976. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. What a fucking zinger. He almost Wendy'd it. He almost Wendogged it. The conspiracy view of history. People from time to time ask me what I think of the conspiracy view of history. By training, I'm a historian. I even have a PhD in the field. This means that I had 3 choices when I got out of school. Go into teaching and starve, stay out of teaching and starve, or go into business and not starve, maybe. I did the latter, and I haven't starved so far. But I still read a lot of history books. I just can't stop. It's kind of a legal addiction. I'm not only a historian by training, I'm a Christian by conviction. You need to understand something about how serious Christians and serious Jews, they have a view of history which is personal. Yes, Judeo-Christianity, a religion that no one has ever ascribed to, except perhaps 13. Let's see. God created the world. The world is not now, nor has it ever been, an impersonal product of random material forces. Biblical religion is inescapably a religion of cosmic personalism. Men are responsible personal agents, responsible primarily to God and secondarily to each other through institutional arrangements: church, state, family, economy. I capitalize state when I refer to civil government in general. I don't capitalize it when I refer to the regional legal jurisdiction known as a state. Furthermore, biblical religion sees history as the product of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, between God and Satan, between redeemed men and rebellious men. This struggle is innately and inescapably personal. This struggle is not simply personal, however, it is inherently conspiratorial. The Bible teaches about a great conspiracy against God. It is a conspiracy which affects every area of life, including politics. David wrote in Psalm 2. I kind of like this angle, actually. This is interesting. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall hold them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. In David's day, there was a conspiracy among the kings of the earth against God. Also, long before David's day, that conspiracy is still raging. For as long as there is history and sin, members of this conspiracy will be enraged at righteousness. The conspirators breathe together. They breathe together against God and God's law, and also against all who are faithful to God, or who may not even believe in God, but who are faithful to God's precepts. Western civilization's moral and especially legal foundations were constructed in terms of biblical morality and biblical law. Thus, the conspirators are at war against Western civilization. It outrages them.
Now,
okay.
Now again, so
we have kind of done a quickie substitution here.
15 years have passed. Okay, and like the phrase that's sort of hovering around these paragraphs is Judeo-Christian civilization.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Okay, so we're going to talk about that last. What we think of as movement conservatism was not at all congealed. Fascinatingly enough, the evangelical Christian bloc was not yet firmly in the conservative movement in 1970.
That was Reagan. Yeah.
Mainline Protestantism was considerably more influential considerably more influential than it was in the early 80s. So like over the course of the 1970s, one of the things that you see happening is that the conservative movement becomes increasingly dominated by evangelical Christians. And you can absolutely see, like, already here, you can see what we think of as movement conservatism considerably more congealed than it was in the previous book.
Yeah. No one has described their outrage more graphically than the English Christian scholar and novelist C.S. Lewis in his magnificent novel, That Hideous Strength. In this novel, Lewis creates a science fiction story about a government-funded scientific research organization, which is hierarchically controlled by systematically evil men who intend to suppress the liberties of the whole population. They seek power with a vengeance, including occult magical power. That Lewis understood that rationalism and materialism can combine with magic is remarkable enough. That he understood it in the 40s is astounding. He was virtually alone in this belief then. Events since 1965 have shown how correct he was.
You see
Occultism
that?
is on the rise.
You see it? See the
Since
year?
1965, exactly.
This is a fascinating thing to me. This is a fascinating because there is no Civil Rights Act of 1965. It doesn't exist. There's not one. There were 5 separate Civil Rights Acts passed between 1963 and 1966. I don't understand. I don't know how 1965 stuck as the number.
Huh.
But go ahead.
Maybe what did they go into effect in 65? Did the early ones go into effect in 65?
It's the Hart-Celler Act is the one, but it's not one of the 6. It's not one of the 5 Civil Rights Acts.
Right. Lewis, oddly enough, died on November 22nd, 1963, the same day that President John F. Kennedy died, and the same day that English novelist atheist Aldous Huxley died. It was Huxley's grandfather, Thomas Huxley, who first promoted and popularized Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, which has probably been the most important book in the arsenal of conspiracy. Vastly more important, at least in the industrialized West, than anything written by Karl Marx, another dedicated follower of Darwin.
Hardcore. Even while we've just been doing this, I almost interrupted to bitch about right-wing anti-Darwinism because Last Things is in a group chat talking about how this text he's got is about to own Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was right about almost everything. Sorry guys.
Look, the idea that a system that can pass on information via reproduction and that will be winnowed down if something does not reproduce is literally just how the system works.
Right.
It's literally just how a system that has those precepts functions. We can build ones and test it. We totally can.
Would also point out, however, that the book that is Charles Darwin's, that is the spicy one, it's actually not on the Origin of Species. It's on the Descent of Man by means of something. I can't remember the subtitle, but it's his other book.
I thought the full title was On the Origin of Species and the Descent of Man by the Means of Natural Selection.
I think there's another. I think it's a second book,
Okay.
but it's on the Origin. Yeah, I'm gonna Jamie it up.
Defining conspiracy. Let us get one thing perfectly clear. As Richard Nixon used to say, everyone believes in the existence of conspiracies. Conspiracies are organized groups of people who maliciously plot to undermine whatever it is you believe in. Obviously, what you believe in is good, so they are evil. That's true. That's actually how you should dive into the Schmidt pit. It smells amazing. Obviously, what you believe in is good, so they are evil. Since there are always fringe groups who have not yet seen the light, Masonic meanings there, and who plot against goodness and truth and true justice, those who believe in goodness and true justice need to defend themselves by stamping out these illegal groups. These groups are clearly illegal since good and just people get their rulers to pass laws making such conspiracies illegal. There is nothing remarkable in all this. Clearly, it isn't worth a whole book. But Abraham and Allen went off the deep end, so to speak. They argued not only that there are conspiracies, but that there is one major conspiracy in 20th century history, at least in the non-communist West. And that is the conspiracy has actually succeeded in capturing the major institutions of modern society: church, state, the media, big business organizations, the prestige universities, and the banking establishment. How many times have we invented the cathedral? Establishment. This is the key word. The oddity of the author's original thesis in 1972 is this: the conspiracy is the establishment. It is not like the conspiracy of the Bolsheviks against the Tsar's establishment. Everyone understands that sort of conspiracy. What we are facing is a successful conspiracy of the American establishment against the Constitution of the United States and everyone who was intended by its authors to be protected by that Constitution. In other words, there are conspiracies, and then there are capital C in italics conspiracies exclamation point. Let me offer an example. Everyone knows that all assassins are madmen who act alone. Everyone knows this, even when the evidence points to other conclusions. The establishment interpretations of every presidential assassin after John Wilkes Booth invariably conclude this. The kooks claim otherwise. But who is a kook? Anyone who claims otherwise. In the case of Booth, historians do admit that this was a conspiracy. We know that several boarders at Mary Surratt's boarding house were involved. After all, one of them tried to kill Secretary of State Seward the same night.
Oh my God, who is writing this? Is this Gary North?
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, yeah, keep going.
So there was a conspiracy. But then an amateur historian, what else, named Otto Eisenschmiel, got the book published. Why Was Lincoln Murdered? A book which reveals evidence that points to Stanton, the Secretary of War, and other anti-Lincoln radical Republicans as possibly involved. This book is no longer in print. Are you surprised? This is not the sort of conspiracy which is discussed in college classrooms in U.S. history, or any other history. Russ Dooney remarked in 1965 that the successful...
Do you know who he is, by the way? Do you know who Russ Dooney is?
No.
Okay, he is the architect. You know, when you think of Doug Wilson, he's like the guy, he's like the pre-Doug Wilson, Doug Wilson. He's the guy who really initially established Christian fundamentalism and the ideology that got me turbodoxed that I despise, which is called Kenism, because I'm not a Kenist and I never was a Kenist. But you know how I suddenly erupted a set and said, "Is this Gary North?"
Yes.
I knew Gary North. Okay, and he's dead now. He died a couple of years ago, but I knew Gary North, and suddenly all of this just fell into his voice. You know.
Russ Dooney remarked in 1965 that the successful and continuing conspiracies of history are never admitted to be conspiracies. Their known activities are extolled as virtues and patriotic works, never as illicit activities. Legitimacy is the reward of success, and only that which is seemingly is admitted as acceptable, partly history. The offense of None Dare, 4.5 million sold, and Cleon Susskind's The Naked Capitalist, 1971, a million sold, is that these authors have argued that America's present rulers are the organizational and spiritual heirs of a band of bloodless revolutionaries who pulled off a true revolution in the United States, though a nearly invisible revolution in the early decades of this century. On the surface, the thesis sounds absolutely crazy, but wouldn't this be the best possible sort of revolution from the point of view of the revolutionaries? A revolution which sounds crazy to its victims even 7 decades after it took place. Here is the offending thesis. Through their dominion over the major educational, political, and financial institutions, these conspirators have set the agenda, especially the intellectual agenda, for the last 7 decades. The kinds of questions they want asked are the only kinds of questions that wise and prudent men do ask. The kinds of answers that they want investigators to come up with are the only kinds of answers that wise and prudent men do come up with. In short, they have established that elusive but powerful climate of opinion which governs the affairs of men. Elsewhere, I have called this process capturing the robes. Those institutions in Western civilization that have been marked by robes, the clergy, judiciary, the university professors, the Brahmins, were targeted a century ago by conspiratorial groups. They did everything they could to capture the leadership of each group in order to mold public opinion. They have been remarkably successful in their efforts. We might also call this capturing the minds or the hearts. It is incorrect to say that a man is what he eats. It's also incorrect to say that a man is what he owns. No, a man is what he thinks, what he truly believes in. Shape his thinking and you can manipulate the man. Yeah, You like that?
I just want to point out that a man literally is what he eats.
Is literally what he eats. That's right. A man does what he thinks, typically. Shape the thinking of a majority of the activist minority in any society, and you can manipulate that society within shifting limits of historicity, of course. Political or financial control over institutions is not enough. Temporary power is not enough. You can eventually lose control to other dedicated conspiratorial groups. Therefore, control over people's access to information, and more importantly, control over the moral and theoretical principles that govern their interpretation of information is essential. Lose this, and you have, in principle, lost control. You will eventually lose control. No civilization has ever fallen to outsiders that did not first suffer a loss of faith in its first principles. The failure of faith always precedes the failure of will. Who is it? Dave Green loves the "We are in a war of faith." That quote. Loves it.
Yeah, he's like sort of downstream of Gary North in his own way.
I see it. The offense of None Dare Call It Conspiracy, and also the offense of this book, is found in the thesis that a dedicated conspiracy has quietly captured the power centers in order to further its own ends against what? So, of course, yes, it is.
Are you going to cliffhang right there?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to catch up with chat a little bit here. All right. Let's see.
Alex wants to know if I've said the have I said the N-word on this?
You have not said the N-word yet.
I don't think I've said it on
you
the show.
have not. Yeah, Lincoln was murdered for being gay. That's right. Although being with Mary Todd Lincoln could apparently make anyone into a hom.
Mary Todd Lincoln's the only woman that's ever spit roasted a president.
This is what you Randall Shirker. This is what you write after reading some Eddie Bernays. Obviously, Eddie Bernays. You know what? The methods that work.
Yeah.
It's why, I don't know. Maybe we'll fucking read some Saul Alinsky or some shit.
Oh, that might be fun.
Yeah. Alex Berry. Too bad it's not a D Spades. Yeah. Well, there is one. Okay, so we're gonna get through the end of this prologue and then call it. Now is your chance, your last chance to sneed those super chats, and we will conclude. Conspiracy against what? Here's where the rubber meets the road. To identify a conspiracy, you must also identify the conspired against. And the identification of the conspired against in both versions of the book is the same, against the true political needs of the American people, as revealed in the U.S. Constitution, the holy document. Both Abraham and Allen are constitutionalists. They advocate what is known as a strict interpretation of the Constitution. If the Constitution does not authorize the civil government or its agencies to do something, the government must be prohibited from doing it. Then the question arises, prohibited by whom? The conspirators understood this from the beginning. This book implies, and they saw to it, that they and their allies controlled those institutions that can legally sound the alarm against any infringement of the people's constitutional liberties. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, the Congress, and the executive branch, especially the cabinet. Also, especially not the cabinet, actually, he just doesn't mention the bureaucracy. So, also, they captured the institutions that teach and inform people who generally become the senior decision makers in society. The media, the three major TV networks and major journals of opinion at the time of writing, the public schools, and most importantly, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Chicago, Berkeley, Michigan, and virtually all the other prestige universities. Abraham and Allen chose the title for the original version for the same reason that John Stormer first chose None Dare Call It Treason in 1964. They said that men dare not call the conspiracy a conspiracy once it has become successful in dominating those institutions that define what is good, what is legal, and therefore what is constitutional. Here is the offense of the book. It argues that what the conspirators have done is to short-circuit the true meaning and true limitations on the federal government of the U.S. Constitution. This means that Abraham has set himself up as a reliable interpreter of the Constitution, in contrast to Earl Warren's Supreme Court. Well, why not? We're all citizens here. Somebody has to interpret it. Since the liberals re-educated the Supreme Court, Congress, and the executive branch, why shouldn't conservatives try to reverse the process? Somebody has to challenge the prevailing misinterpretations. These misinterpretations are not sealed in stone. A lot of them are sealed in paper-thin 5-4 decisions. Most people are afraid of calling attention to this capture of power, for in doing so, they would themselves become targets of the accusation that they had become treasonous or conspiratorial. Conspirators against those who seem to be able to announce the standards of goodness and true justice. In short, the success of the conspirators can be seen in their ability to make their critics look like conspirators, or fools. You mean you think that the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't understand the Constitution and you do? Why, you must be crazy. And who wants to appear crazy? And yet, more and more people have looked at the decisions of the Supreme Court on compulsory busing of public school children. What kind of children would that be? On striking down state laws against abortion, on the insanity defense, which allows someone to shoot the president of the United States and escape prison. And they have concluded the Supreme Court is crazy, not me.
I would also point out that the man who did that has just released an incredible psychedelic country album.
John Hinckley?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he was. Yeah, I guess he would have been. Yeah. On his, follow John Hinckley on Spotify. Not even kidding.
You totally can.
Follow John.
You can follow him on Twitter too. He's on Twitter too now.
Yeah.
Can't believe we just did that.
More and more people have looked at the collapse of U.S. foreign policy, especially in the last year of the Carter administration, and have concluded the State Department is crazy, not me. More and more people have looked at U.S. economic policy, especially in the last year of the Carter administration, and have concluded the economists are crazy, not me. Look, even the economists are saying it these days. This shift of thinking above all else is what the conspiracy fears. It is a shift in the climate of opinion. It is a shift which they find difficult to control any longer, and which threatens their monopoly of influence. This shift has taken place since 1972, the year None Dare was published. This is why the new edition could become far more influential and far more dangerous to the conspirators than the first. Conclusion. The concept of the people has, for over a century, served the toreadors of professional historiography as a red cape. That would be the fancy word for theater kid. To focus the attention of the victims away from the sword. The people's will cannot be thwarted, we all know. Watch the people march forward. The people will control the evil special interest groups. Federal legislation will protect the people, for the people have so willed it. Forget about actual individuals. Keep your eyes on the people. Does this all sound vaguely familiar? We can almost see Dorothy in front of the screen with the wizard's glaring face looking out at her. Don't mess with the people. The people's will is sovereign, she is warned. Meanwhile, Toto is behind the curtain, pulling at the old man's pants leg. Pay no attention to the old man behind the curtain, she is sternly warned by the image. Larry Abraham's function is a lot like Toto's. There are some people behind that curtain who don't want you to pay any attention, and they are not the people. They've even gone to the expense of training and employing 3 generations of professional historians to explain to you why nothing important is going on back there. So go ahead, or tear back the curtain, read this book, and then you be the judge. Cape shit.
No, I will be the judge.
I will be the judge, jury, and executioner.
I can't believe I shilled the would-be assassin of President Ronald Reagan. It's been a wild night here.
Ronnie
on LMD.
Reagan. All right. So that'll be it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks everyone for super chatting. Sandbatch, do you have anything to show? When's your poetry book actually coming out so people can pay you for it?
I'm gonna shop it to a couple of publishers, and I'm then actually gonna have LSU Press. I have a reader at LSU Press that wants to look at it, but I'm getting dangerously close to settling on self-publishing just because I can make more money that way. And so like it could be as soon as the next couple of weeks, which will be really cool. I might post the title and the working cover, and maybe even do some readings from it here pretty soon. I see. The thing is, I think it's good, and it's very rare for me to think any of my work is good. Like I'll have an article that like goes to the top of Real Clear Books, and I'll be like, who are these fucking retards reading this shit? And I think these are pretty good. So it'll be soon. It'll either be soon, or I'll tell everybody that it's going to be next year, because like some university press, I know if it goes in the university press system, it'll take a year for it to come out. But I want to get on, because I have never written and published a book, and I really feel like I need to get on the scoreboard. So I'm going to try and do it soon.
Cool. Well, we'll all look forward to that. I will certainly be a buyer wherever it comes out.
Right.
Because I buy everything.
Yeah.
So let's see. I have, you can catch me with Pete Quinones and Mike of Pole this week on Drive Time Movie Night, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, the White Sox time, the Pope's time. And you can also catch me on Thursday with Clossington doing the pre-show for OGC Pony Express Radio. We will be talking about informal power networks and fraternal societies in American history. So
I wonder which one y'all are going to talk about.
Yeah, which one? Who could possibly guess which two? So, all right, that'll be it. We will see you next week.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long, exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them, and punishment if you don't. But they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty unto its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.